Chelsea Clinton has a new podcast called That Can't Be True. This podcast is funded by the Clinton Foundation and currently has 25 reviews with an average of 2.3 stars on Spotify. So if you'd be so kind, head on over to Spotify today and give This Dumb Week a 5-star rating so that we can beat Chelsea Clinton. And with that out of the way, welcome to This Dumb Week, a weekly live Twitter space hosted by Alex Marinos and yours truly, Dr. Rollergator. Available in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and others. Alex, welcome back. Have you had a sufficiently dumb week? And that is the problem with pre-rolled recorded introductions. Nathan, are you aware of where our favorite co-host, Alex Marinos, happens to be?
I am not, no. Unlike last week, we're not together at the whatever it was that I claimed that we were doing.
Okay, I put out several sort of bat signals that are going into the ether and not returning to me. So I guess we will have to continue and see if hopefully he's not in some gutter laying there waiting for 911 to come assist them or something along those lines.
Yeah, that would not be good. Maybe he's trying to secure that Clinton Foundation funding.
Very, very, very possibly. I mean, I know that a lot of people have switched to just waiting until the podcast version of this gets pushed out. But, I don't think that the co-host should be one of them. I don't.
Ideally not, no.
Ideally no. But I guess we will have to just jump in and hope that the co-host is found at some point. There are still plenty of things that your expertise might come into play on, perhaps. I don't know if right out the gate it will, but we can start off with something that is good news for everyone involved. From page 6. Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau were recently spotted making out on the singer's lavish yacht, confirming their romantic involvement. In photos published by the Daily Mail on Saturday, the fireworks singer, 40, rocked a black one-piece swimsuit on the deck of the Caravel while enjoying a passionate kiss with a shirtless Trudeau who wore only a pair of jeans for the yacht that day. Another snapshot showed the former Canadian Prime Minister, 53, cradling the hitmaker's rear end as they embraced on the yacht's upper deck. In yet another photo, Perry, 40, wrapped her arms around Trudeau's neck as he seemingly nuzzled her cheek. The steamy photos were reportedly taken off the coast of Santa Barbara, California in late September by a tourist on a passing boat. She pulled up her boat next to a small public whale-watching boat when they started making out, a witness of the encounter told Daily Mail. I didn't realize who she was until I saw a tattoo on the guy's arm, and I immediately realized it was Justin Trudeau. So, good news. Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau are dating. I hope that you are happy for this development.
I think they should get a room,
Well, I think the ocean and a yacht is their room. That is their room. Other people snooping in with their prying eyes is not necessarily their fault, right? It's an invasion of their privacy.
I guess you could put it that way. Yeah. I mean, good for them, I guess. I hope they're happy.
Well, she is now an astronaut. She has been to space, and he is an expert on quantum computing. So it's a sort of a meeting of the minds. It's a pairing of the world's most intelligent.
I forgot
couple.
that she was an astronaut. Right.
Yes.
I had totally blanked on that. Yeah.
Now, did you know that Justin Trudeau was an expert in quantum computing?
I also didn't know that, but kind of a given. I mean, to be the president of Canada or whatever, you got to be an expert in all kinds of things.
Sir, he is a minister, and in fact, he is the prime minister.
The prime minister. Okay, well, close enough.
Okay, well, you've never heard his quantum computing lectures?
I can't say that I have. No.
Oh, you missed an early wave of fawning in the media over his intelligence. So I do have his quantum computing lecture team, queued up here.
I wasn't
all right,
asked
let's
to
hear
explain quantum computing, but when do you expect Canada's ISIL mission to begin again? And are we not doing anything in the interim while we prepare?
Okay. Very simply, normal computers work by... Don't interrupt me. When you walk out of here, you will know more. Well, no, some of you will know far less about quantum computing, but most of you, normal computers work either there's power going through a wire or not. It's 1 or a 0. They're binary systems. What quantum states allow for is much more complex information to be encoded into a single bit. Regular computer bit is either a 1 or a 0, on or off. A quantum state can be much more complex than that because, as we know, things can be both particle and wave at the same times, and the uncertainty around quantum states allows us to encode more information into a much smaller computer. So that's what's exciting about quantum computing, and that's what we're doing.
I guess that's not completely wrong.
It's not completely wrong, but it's not particularly informative either. It is really just sort of like the introduction in a encyclopedia, right? If you were to flip it open to what is quantum computing?
That is true, yeah.
That's actually how most
he knew it
of
off the top of his head, so all right.
Well, it was actually
he was actually there about it, I guess.
He was actually there with a quantum computing consortium. He was doing a speaking tour with them, so I think he did prep in advance to learn what it was he was actually
that's good.
Hyping
up. All right. Is there like a Canadian quantum computer company, like is D-Wave or somebody Canadian?
I'm not sure if D-Wave is Canadian. I don't know.
Huh.
It would surprise me if they were, because most of that
I don't know
stuff
what they do in
coming
Canada.
out of, like,
I guess not quantum computers, or I guess they do lumber or maple syrup or something.
Yes, it is a quantum maple computer, and it is the superposition of whether it is a dehydrated bit of maple candy or if it is actually gooey maple syrup. That is the superposition. So yeah, the Justin Trudeau, Katy Perry are dating apparently, and I don't know if that's going to be too much of a public get together, but you have an astronaut and a quantum computing expert, pairing their minds together. Who knows what they're going to embark on next? But in other news, 404 Media says the Discord hack that is every user's worst nightmare. The catastrophic breach has impacted Discord user data, including selfies and identity documents uploaded as part of the app's verification process, email addresses, phone numbers, approximately where the users live, and much more. The hack, carried out by a group that is attempting to extort Discord, showed in stark terms the risk of the tech companies collecting user identity documents, and specifically in the context of verifying their age. Discord started to ask users in the UK, for example, to upload a selfie with their ID as part of the country's age verification law recently. This is about to get really ugly, the hackers wrote in a Telegram channel, which 404 Media joined while posting user data on Wednesday. A source with knowledge of the breach confirmed with 404 Media that the data is legitimate. 404 Media granted the source anonymity to speak candidly about the sensitive incident. Earlier this month, Discord announced hackers and breached one of its third-party vendors that supports its customer service efforts. That vendor, which the hackers suggest is Zendesk, handles age-related appeals, Discord said. On Wednesday, Discord told The Verge it has identified around 70,000 users who may have had their government IDs and photos exposed as part of the breach. In their Telegram group, the hackers took issue with Discord earlier, saying the breach impacted a small number of government ID images. The hackers posted a screenshot of what they presented as the size of the stolen data, 1.5 terabytes. Then on Wednesday, the hackers started posting Discord samples of the user data that included selfies of people holding up their ID documents. At least 2 of these are from people holding identity documents from the US and Canada. Some of these are images where the individual person is clearly visible. Others are screenshots of larger folders containing thumbnails of the images. So the UK has been actually pushing pretty hard on those verification services. So I wonder how many people are how many companies are either outsourced to like the same sort of identity verification services, creating sort of like a weak chain there, or how many are just distributed and sort of doing it themselves, where we can expect a lot of those in the future, but as one-offs. Because there was that
The sort of interesting thing here is they said that it was Zendesk that got hacked because it was part of their appeal process. So my guess is that like they claim to delete the images after you take them, but they must keep them around for some period of time in case of the fact that it fails, and then you appeal, and then they look at the photo you submitted, and then something, and then maybe they delete it, or they keep it around, or whatever. So it sounds like it was like not the verification service, it was like a dump of the images from that were stored in their Zendesk instance or whatever. So when you created a support ticket, the agent could go check and see what your selfie was or whatever.
Right. So, but my general question is, how many more of these do we expect if the UK is going to push for all these companies to do age verification, but sort of the age verification is
Oh yeah, they all seem
possibly
kind of fly by wire. Like a bunch of the companies that got started around this in the UK are like totally rando stuff. At least it looked like. I didn't dig into it deeply, but it seemed like they were, I don't know what the requirements were to be an age verification company, but it didn't seem like they were very strong.
Yeah. So I don't know, that sort of stuff is annoying. And I know that, Twitter/X has a verification system as well in order to, get your blue check mark and your ability to get your payouts on here. But, the UK sort of making things mandatory makes it a little bit more sketchy as to how many more companies are going to be opened up to this. Because, you still have a bunch of startups every day. Did you hear a couple, like a month or so ago, of that T app, that app that was supposed to be where women
Oh yeah,
could go
they got
onto a
totally
safe...
hacked, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. So supposedly a lot of those pushes, like, coming from the UK and such are going to affect more startups and things like that, who maybe are going to cut corners on that part of the process. I don't know. I'm assuming
It's important to put all your customer data in a S3 bucket that's public.
Yes, that is a good recommendation. Well, some sad news, Joe Biden, or, positive, maybe good news. It's depending on how you look at it. Joe Biden undergoing radiation therapy as cancer care enters new phase. The good news being that he would be, it would be possible to have some hope for radiation therapy, that his cancer isn't so far progressed that is a hopeless endeavor. Former President Joe Biden is undergoing a new phase of treatment for an aggressive form of cancer that was diagnosed in May, a spokesperson said Saturday. As part of a treatment plan for prostate cancer, President Biden is currently undergoing radiation therapy and hormone treatment, the spokesperson for the former president said. The radiation treatment is expected to span 5 weeks and marks a new point in his care, a source familiar with NBC News. He told he has already been taking a pill in the form of hormone medication. Last month, Biden, 82, also had a skin cancer treatment known as Mohs surgery. A large bandage on his forehead was visible in public appearances at that time. Following that procedure, his physician wrote in a memo that all cancerous tissue was successfully removed and that no further treatment was required. The former president announced in May that he had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that had already metastasized to his bones. His office said at the time he was pursuing several treatment options to ensure effective management of the illness. In a post on X after he shared his diagnosis, Biden said, "Cancer touches us all. Like so many of you, Jill and I have learned that we are the strongest in broken places. Thank you for lifting us up with love and support." So, of course, I wish the former president well. However, I would like to point out that had he not dropped out of the race and won, I am curious as to how public this information would be, or if this would be yet another thing that he would be hiding from public. Because after all of the questions about his senility and his cognitive ability, having on top of it a cancer diagnosis and likely treatment courses that make you more ill and weaker would be an open question. And if he were to have become president and then quickly resigned, he would have sort of screwed Kamala Harris out of a full term, maybe giving her a couple, only a couple months shave. But, a president is able to serve 10 years, 2 terms in 2 years. So he would have to try to last 2 years before he resigned in order for her to actually be able to have 2 elections behind her belt and serve the full amount that would be allotted to her. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought about what would have happened, whether it would have been kind of covered up or what would have happened there. I mean, I wish him the best. Yeah, sucks to have cancer, obviously. And seems like, good that he was out.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish the former president well, but now that he is out of office, it is perfectly okay for the New York Times to start looking into possibly shady things that might have occurred with him and his family and their influence around the world and the deals that they might have cut. New York Times, October 7th. Hunter Biden pursued a deal to sell land around the U.S. Embassy in Romania. While his father, Joseph R. Biden Jr., was vice president, Hunter Biden began developing relationships that led to an audacious proposal to sell the land around the United States Embassy building in Romania to a group that included a Chinese company. Hunter Biden was involved in the proposed deal from multiple perspectives, creating what he privately acknowledged to an associate was an ethical quagmire, according to documents and 4 people with knowledge of the matter who were not authorized to speak about it. Even after years of investigations and a suggestion by federal prosecutors that Mr. Biden's work in Romania left him vulnerable to foreign lobbying charges, the full story of his efforts there have not been told before. Previously unreported details exemplify how Mr. Biden's pursuit of lucrative foreign deals fit into the broader foreign influence industry and complicated U.S. diplomacy. The deal he was pursuing left open the possibility that the Chinese could have ended up with an ownership stake in a critical asset, the land around the embassy in Bucharest, and possibly the land on which the embassy sat. The possibility concerned one of his former partners who sought to avoid the outcome at the time, while another partner later rejected the idea that it was ever on the table. The chapter fits into a well-worn playbook used by deep-pocketed foreign interests to seek favor in Washington by courting politically connected Americans, including presidential family members like the adult sons of President Trump or the son and brother of former President Jimmy Carter. Hunter Biden's dealings in Romania began when his father was vice president, but the land deal did not take shape until the elder Mr. Biden left that office. Some of Hunter Biden's foreign dealings attracted wide attention when his father ran for president in 2020 and became a major political and legal issue during the Biden presidency, though the Romania effort remains relatively unknown. Hunter Biden had dual roles in the enterprise. One was a businessman. He and his partners, including his father's younger brother James Biden, were stakeholders in a venture that was to co-own developed properties and vacant land around the embassy in Bucharest. Joining them was the wealthy Romanian who had developed the area and an influential Chinese state-linked company, which Hunter Biden was courting. The other role was a legal counsel. While these negotiations were going on, Mr. Biden was separately working as a lawyer and advisor for the same Romanian developer, Gabriel Poplovicu. His legal team was trying to stymie a corruption case in Romania related to the purchase of the land years earlier. We have an interest, it seems, from every possible angle, Mr. Biden wrote in a WhatsApp message to one of his partners in May 2017 that was reviewed by the reporter for the New York Times. In the message chain, Mr. Biden conceded that he probably could not continue as a lawyer for Mr. Poplovicu if I am part of the purchasing group. The two roles, Mr. Biden wrote, should be as separate and as distanced as possible to avoid the appearance of a clear conflict, which is not something to take lightly as an attorney. Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings mostly came as he spiraled from addiction and self-destructive behavior that exacerbated family and financial problems, amid his grief over the illness and death of his older brother, Beau. This account of the Romania proposal is derived from hundreds of pages of business documents, letters, emails, and text messages obtained via public records requests provided to congressional and executive branch investigators or retrieved from a cache of files linked to Mr. Biden's abandoned laptop, as well as interviews and testimony transcripts. The land deal collapsed in 2017 before the Chinese invested any money in it amid a contentious struggle for control among Mr. Biden's partners, during which he protested in a WhatsApp message. I'm the only one putting an entire family legacy on the line. Mr. Biden's efforts came partly as his father was pressing the Romanians to rid their country of nepotism and corruption. There is no evidence that Mr. Biden's father was involved in the business dealings, though he was introduced by his son to executives of the Chinese company, CEFC China Energy, in an apparent effort to impress them. A spokeswoman for the former president declined to comment. Hunter Biden, James Biden, Mr. Poplovicu, and their lawyers did not respond to requests for comment. A lawyer for the younger Mr. Biden previously told the Times that his client never discussed anything related to Romania with his father. Nonetheless, U.S. government officials were alarmed about potential conflicts of interest between his father's vice presidential portfolio and Hunter Biden's business. The activity became a political liability when his father began a successful campaign for the presidency in April 2019. By then, the international dealings of Hunter and James Biden had largely run their course. CEFC had come under scrutiny from authorities in the United States and China and had pivoted to culminating Mr. Trump's circle. The Justice Department was looking into Hunter Biden's foreign businesses. The matter dodged the Bidens throughout the elder Mr. Biden's presidency. Then, as he was preparing to leave office, the president in December 2024 pardoned his son for tax and gun convictions, as well as any crimes he may have committed starting around the time he began pursuing foreign businesses, including his widely criticized service on the board of a Ukrainian energy company. James Biden and other family members also received preemptive pardons despite not having been charged with any crimes. So they continue a little bit on that investigation. There is no like smoking gun as normal of a specific set of criminal activities. But of course, with the preemptive pardon, one presumes that anything they find would just be, interesting as an archival piece of history, not necessarily impacting anything major. And it looks like we have a co-host arriving. Gonna get Alex up here. But yeah, so
what am I, chopped liver?
You are not chopped liver, Nathan. You have been a fantastic cover for Alexandros Marinos, who was,
thank you. Hopefully not in a ditch dying. We did say that.
We did make sure that to note that we hoped you weren't in trouble, Alex. Were you in any danger that you had to fight away?
Well, I was talking to my wife, so.
Oh, okay.
And then she was like, "What happened to your space? Don't you have a space?" I'm like, "God damn it!"
All right. Well,
anyway, you know how I was doing kind of better at being here on time?
Yes.
Well, let's say
you made sure that you regressed to the mean.
Yes, exactly. I've now used up all my credit.
You have not violated the law of large numbers.
No. Large numbers of delay minutes for me. All right. I'm sorry, Gator.
Well, fortunately, you only missed some of the most important stories of the week so far, which is that Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau are dating.
Yeah. So I am, I was telling my friends that some chat room somewhere that the way I envision this happening is Trudeau showing up with his interns and saying, like, guys, I was told I need to go on dark horse, whatever that means, in order to repair my image. And they're like, what's go on dark horse mean? Like, I don't know. You guys are young millennials, whatever, figure it out. So, turns out that the advice was misinterpreted and he ended up on top of a woman who sang a song called Dark Horse.
I see. Well, an astronaut who sang a song named Dark Horse. Don't forget
that is true. A woman in space. Yes, correct.
Yes,
true.
She is a space cadet.
A space pioneer woman.
Well, we also mentioned that
it is very. I mean, she is the kind that a man from Cuba might prefer.
That's a deep cut, Alex. That's a deep cut.
Saying.
we also noted that former President Joe Biden is undergoing radiation therapy for his advanced cancer, and we wish him well. And we've just finished reading a New York Times article that has investigated more of Hunter Biden and James Biden's dealings involving a a Chinese company trying to buy land around the U.S. Embassy in Romania. Noting that James Biden and Hunter Biden have pardons for any criminal activity that might have occurred during that time.
Would you, if you were to join the government now, Gator, okay, let's say that the so-called president brings you in and says, Gator, I know we have our differences of opinion about the elections and whatnot, but I really need you to run the, National Statistical Agency or something.
Okay.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics, as it were. Would you take the position without demanding that it's you will obviously get a blanket pardon for anything after the fact?
Well, right now, I think my official position is that every single person who works for the government needs to also serve a prison sentence after their exit, and that is the only just thing to do at this point. And so I would have to say that no, I would, under those circumstances, I would refrain from joining, no matter what.
So your solution to the preemptive pardon is retroactive criminalization, just blanket.
Just yes, I mean that's the crime in and of itself is I see. Running for public office,
attempting to govern these people.
Yes,
got it.
Yes,
for better or worse.
Which under this shutdown, apparently, is going to mean that fewer and fewer people are active in this criminal behavior called government. These are the federal agencies Trump is targeting for layoffs by Axios. President Trump and his administration prepared to lay off thousands of federal workers on Friday, using the government shutdown as an opportunity to target agencies that aren't aligned with the president's views. The mass layoffs could further decimate a federal workforce already down 200,000 employees since Trump retook office, sending away thousands more who are in charge of crafting America's healthcare, education, and environmental policy. What they're saying: a spokesperson for the largest federal employees union, the American Federation of Government Employees, told Axios that the Trump administration is illegally firing thousands of workers who provide critical services to communities across the country. In AFGE's 93 years of existence under several presidential administrations, including during Trump's first term, no president has ever decided to fire thousands of furloughed workers during a government shutdown, they said. The Federation also suing the administration on behalf of over its 800,000 members. The White House declined to comment on the layoffs, referring Axios to the Office of Management and Budget, which said the layoffs are underway and substantial. The administration provided details on its RIF plan in a court filing Friday evening. Here's what we know about the currently affected agencies and what public services they offer. Health and Human Services Department. 1,100 to 1,200 estimated employees will be laid off within the HHS. HHS employees across multiple divisions have received reduction in force notices as a direct consequence of the Democrat-led government shutdown, a spokesperson told Axios' Maya Goldman and Tina Reed. The layoffs came after a wave of scientists already voluntarily or involuntarily left the department earlier this year due to concerns about Secretary Robert F. Kennedy's leadership. The department is tasked with overseeing Medicare and Medicaid, which together provide health care for nearly 40% of Americans, including children. The government also administers the temporary assistance for needy families and Head Start programs. The HHS includes the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which monitors emerging health threats. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, will lose approximately 176 employees in the layoffs. This is part of getting CISA back on mission, they said in an email statement. DHS did not answer Axios' question on the layoffs, on if the layoffs would affect immigration and customs enforcement, the agency in charge of carrying out the president's massive detainee and deportation programs. It also did not confirm if there would be any cuts to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which prepares for natural disasters and responds to emergencies. The Treasury Department. 1,446 employees will be dismissed at the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department presides over a variety of agencies in charge of fiscal policy, including the Internal Revenue Service, which collects taxes, the U.S. Mint, which issues coins as well as commemorative medals, and the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. You know, I think, though, at this point where if you're talking about the Internal Revenue Service and have to tell the reader that they collect taxes, I think that perhaps this conversation is too above the reader's pay grade to be participating in. You know?
Oh, my God.
Like, you know, there are some...
The Department of Health and Human Services is in charge of health.
You know, there are days
what
where...
What I want to know is what the human services are. Just because I can think of multiple...
That was the needy families. We
make
make the families needy, or we help them if they're needy or something.
And if they deal with everything that serves humans, what is the rest of the government doing?
Well, that's the AI.
The thing
future.
that they love to omit in these articles is how many total employees these organizations have. Doesn't DHS have like 150,000 employees?
We're talking about 176 redundancies. Like, this is a very small company going out of business that nobody would even like consider caring about. Like, what? I don't know. Like,
okay, but if you
that's what I'm saying.
Imagine...
If they listed this as a percent, if it was like 0.1% of DHS employees will be let go, it'd be like,
I think it's less than that. I think you're overstating.
It's probably
the
less than that. Yes.
Happening. Yeah.
But what if part of the reason that Grand Theft Auto 6 has been delayed this long is because of government bureaucracy, and this is only going to exacerbate the delays, right? You know, think about that.
Are you a player, Gator?
I haven't played Grand Theft Auto since I think 4, which I guess now is like 20 years ago or something. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
In that case, I guess we're gonna have to, grit our teeth and bear it, man. It'll be okay.
The education department is cutting 466 workers. The department would not detail which department offices would be affected. By the numbers, roughly 50% of the department's workforce was let go in March, turning the department tasked with administering financial aid and funding, equal access for marginalized student populations, and providing oversight for education policy into a skeleton crew. Oh, that's apropos for Halloween.
And an organization that didn't exist until 1980. We managed to educate children until then.
Well, if the presumably when they were founded in the 1980s, they were helping with marginalized groups. Well, if those groups are still marginalized, they must not be helping. I don't know.
Well, it's really hard to take something.
Well, if they helped them, we wouldn't need them.
It's really hard
anymore.
to.
We help them, but they're just not very competent. Is the response?
It's a really tough job to turn margarine into butter, sir.
Yes.
The Environmental Protection Agency.
I'm joking, but it's a very self-defeating situation to be in, and not dissimilar to what the critique that Kennedy very effectively made on HHS, which is to say that look, you got entire divisions, responsible for managing chronic disease, and it's exploding. It's not exploding like yesterday. It's exploding for like a couple of decades now, and either you're not doing anything. You're spending a bunch of money, but either what you're doing isn't working, or you have no handle on definitely what you're doing isn't working, but you're also have no handle on the subject. And at this point, we have to ask whether you're causing the problem you're supposed to be trying to fix. You know what I mean? It's not there's no law that this problem has to exist in modern societies or anything. So questions have to be asked at some point.
Well, approximately 20 to 30 EPA employees will be dismissed by the EPA.
Wow.
So the environment is unprotected right now.
A massacre.
That's well, hey, don't use the M word. That's coming up. The M word is coming up. It's coming up hot and heavy. So
So long as we don't call it a bloodbath, I think we're safe.
Oh, now see, you are getting ahead of us, Alex. There is a bloodbath. Okay. It is coming. It is coming. Approximately 187 employees at the Energy Department will be released from their roles. Commerce is expected to lose an estimated 315 employees. Trump officials say substantial federal worker layoffs have begun. So this is a personal story from NPR. It feels terrible. Federal workers' family tightens their belts as shutdown drags on. In a way, Stephanie Rogers started preparing for the current moments months ago, when she and her two daughters moved in with her mother about a half hour south of Denver. High prices for everything was certainly one reason. When you added up the numbers between both our family households, it was going to be something that we could not keep going long term, says Rogers, who's 44 and divorced with no child support. Rogers has been a microbiologist with the Food and Drug Administration for 16 years and is now among hundreds of thousands of federal employees not working. She's also a chapter president with the National Treasury Employees Union. Another big motivation for living together? The uncertainty of a new administration focused on shrinking the government, plus Rogers' memory of the last federal shutdown back in 2018. And we're living in that reality now, she says, and so that is our decision, just to make sure all of us survive this process. Her mother, Nina Chapman, says she loves having her granddaughters around. I was grateful we had a basement. It was just a wonderful area to put everybody, she says. Planning ahead for life without a paycheck. When the previous shutdown dragged on for 35 days, from late 2018 to 2019, Rogers says she was utterly unprepared, so she made sure to plan better this time. In the weeks before this shutdown, as the deadline for funding lapse approached, she rushed to squeeze in medical appointments. She requested early refills of the kids' medications in case she couldn't afford them without a paycheck. Rogers also made a painful decision that will carry its own financial cost. I had to pull out of my retirement, which has some tax consequences for next year, she says. Rogers has asked for flexibility with her car payment and is thinking twice about extracurriculars for her girls who are 10 and 12. They might have to skip field trips that cost extra or volleyball games that are a long drive away. And the plan has been to buy only essential food. In fact, we just had our freezer go out, she says. We lost our meat, and that's just devastating to us because we were counting on that. Rogers also applied for state unemployment. Furloughed federal workers are generally eligible for that, though they must refund the money when the shutdown ends after they get any retroactive pay withheld during that time. We don't know what the future looks like. But President Trump has floated the idea that some workers might be denied back pay despite a law he signed mandating it in 2019. He also threatened mass firings during the shutdown, a process the administration said began Friday. And Trump has talked about permanently cutting Democrat programs without saying specifically what that means. Rogers says all of this makes the current shutdown feel very different. It feels terrible, she says. I don't know if I even have a job when I walk away from this, much less if I will get paid. Do I have health insurance if we don't get back pay? It's a really hard place to be when you have your children who rely on you. Rogers believes she and other federal employees do essential work, such as food inspections, that the general public may only appreciate when they're gone. But across the federal government, it's been stressful all year. Mass layoffs and funding cuts have left fewer people working longer hours, she says, only to be sent the message that now we're not really wanted. My mother worries about it constantly. My daughter has woken up and said, "Does mommy have a job today?" We don't know what our future looks like, she says. So even though she's in her dream job, Rogers says she started applying for other positions outside the federal government. Now, of course, I have lots of sympathy for a person who needs to, navigate those types of scenarios, despite the fact that I, want fewer federal workers to begin with. I don't wish, hard times upon anyone specifically. However, I would say that Trump's behavior is trying to make the idea of working for government a very unpleasant career path choice. Like the idea that you're not going to get back pay.
Family values, which was part of his campaign, bringing together the multi-generational family and whatnot, I think.
Yes, it is bringing families closer together. You do have a point on that. In the basement.
Just refresh my memory. Did NPR write any of these sub stories for when people were losing their jobs for not taking the shots?
I do not recall any. That doesn't mean they didn't. I'm sure that they were heavily focused on those well-meaning people who had their freedom of choice and wanted to make sure that they were in control and informed of their own health decisions, but they were being mandated and therefore losing their jobs because they were not going along with the mandates. I'm sure that they wrote several, because why wouldn't they, Alex?
They wrote them, but they didn't. They never got published. You mean?
Yes, that's the likely scenario, I would say.
Yes. Anyway, which I mean to say, yes, of course, nobody wants to hear about children waking up, in a nightmare and asking if their, one parent has work. But the critical element here is who gets to claim that compassion. At any given time seems to be very politically motivated, which it makes it propaganda, right? Like, I don't know, they're not telling you that this is why they are writing the story, right? But of course, exactly, like they wouldn't write the story if they didn't consider that the the victim, so
the nuts and bolts of the story
worthwhile.
The nuts and bolts of the story are absolutely like the story could be told like this. Person loses job, faces things that normally happen to people losing their job. Like that's the whole story, right? Like everything.
It's even worse than that.
Yeah, there's like an attitude of like guaranteed employment that is like comes out in these stories that I find kind of strange.
It's even worse than that, guys. It's like person loses jobs, decides to apply for others. Like, okay.
Yeah, like and all the details of
she's not even rejected.
Like,
it's not even like they're not even making the case that like she was hyper specialized in this one thing and hasn't looked out of her field in 20 years, which is like regulatory this and that, which has no demand in the market and whatever. She basically gave up her market availability to serve the government. No, she just decided to apply for another job, which she clearly could. So now she may get another job.
Yes, I on a personal note, I certainly hope that she recovers and that she finds another job, et cetera, et cetera. That is a genuine feeling that I have. But you are right, Alex. That the whole point of the story is to simply tug at someone's heartstrings and get them to think down the chain. A person could do this by making a decision, and they want, therefore, encouraging the reader to want that decision to be made so that this woman doesn't suffer. Like that's the only connection they're really trying to draw, because the entire story is something that anyone with a job and possibly with children has ever had to think about or deal with, which is, what do I do when no more money is coming in?
Had a countdown. Like they were like, yeah, this is going to happen in like a couple weeks. So she had advance notice and like
but also
prep, which you don't always get.
If I'm not mistaken, this woman was not part of the firings that we've been talking about, right? She's just without pay because the government shut down.
Yeah, it's a furlough. She doesn't know if she's gonna. She doesn't know
Right.
when the thing's gonna be, removed. She doesn't know if possibly during these firings or layoffs she's going to be among them. Okay, so there's ambiguity there, but she's not currently among the batch of the fired.
Right, and the shutdown has happened because, if I'm not mistaken, and I hate this kind of framing. I'm just using it right now because it's relevant to this particular critique. The sort of the most close to the trigger cause is that the Democrats have not voted for the continuing resolution that the Republicans wanted to pass. Correct?
That's my understanding, yes. And Chuck Schumer has made many statements in regards to this being some sort of strategy and leverage and pressure they are trying to apply.
And Ezra Klein wrote about it in the New York Times before it happened. Like, this was like a pre-planned sort of thing. So, okay, so why this did not get mentioned in the article exactly?
Well, I have some fantastic news for you, Alex. Even though you were trying to spoil everything for everyone. We have your language right here. CDC is over. RFK Jr. lays off over 1,000 employees in Friday night massacre.
Yes.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. moved one step closer to his goal of dismantling the nation's premier public health agency by dismissing more than 1,000 scientists, doctors, and public health officials from the Department of Health and Human Services late Friday night. The dramatic move came during the second week of a government shutdown as part of Trump administration's aggressive push to even further slash the size of the federal workforce and punish Democrats. The culling reportedly started with at least 4,000 people across departments, including education, treasury, housing, and urban development, and energy, among others. But the bloodshed at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was especially acute, according to a list crowdsourced by CDC employees who received layoff notices that was viewed by MSNBC. The firings ran across more than a dozen CDC divisions and centers, wiping out entire offices and teams that investigate disease outbreaks, manage infectious disease responses, collect data, publish scientific reports, and communicate with global partners in Congress. CDC is over. It was killed, said Dr. Dimitri Daskalaskis, the former director of the CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, who recently resigned to protest what he described as Kennedy's unscientific takeover of the CDC. This administration only knows how to break things. They have made America at risk for outbreaks and attacks by nefarious players. People should be scared. MSNBC spoke with 8 current and former CDC officials, most of whom requested anonymity for fear of retaliation against themselves or their remaining colleagues. The emails alerting staffers of their firings came late Friday night, but current and former employees said CDC staffers have been bracing for layoffs since President Donald Trump signaled that he would use mass reductions in force as a way to punish Democrats for the ongoing shutdown, caused by a budget standoff between Republicans and Democrats. Notification that they'd lost their jobs came even as the human resources professional tasked with implementation had been furloughed as part of the shutdown. So there you go. You get your blood shed, bloodbath, your blood spilling massacre language there, Alex. You get that.
How dare they? What is it? Provoke violence against government employees or something? I don't know what.
Well, there is a twist on that story, because after that story came out, CNN reported that more than half of the CDC staffers recently fired by Trump administration have been reinstated. So there's a little bit of a roller coaster going on here with employment statuses.
I must say, though, like, it is wild how difficult it is to have any kind of public organization that can be managed in any way, right? Because if you can't fire your employees, like, it's unclear who manages whom at that point, right? Like, I mean, and I know this very much from the Greek public sector, where firing people is effectively impossible. And at that point, I mean, somebody shows up at work and they're like, do this. And you're like, hey, let's say you're managing a team, right? And they show up at work and you're like, hey, today I would like you to do this. And they're like, no. Right? What? What? I don't know. Like, we expect a lot from government, and I'm first to like put a lot of blame on the people at the top. But at some point, you're like, well, I mean, it has to technically be possible to do anything at some point. Like, there has to be a way.
And so
there also could be an aspect of malicious compliance with like the CDC thing. Like somebody could have sent out notices to way more random people than were actually intended to be fired, and then reinstate them or whatever, but don't report on that story.
I don't know. I mean, could be, but the whole point is that the electoral process works by bringing the rebels, let's say, into control of the government, and with the implied message being like, well, if you can do it better, here you go, right? But at the same time, if you have no way of sort of reconfiguring the organizations that you are now told to quote unquote manage, i.e., you can't manage them, it makes the whole thing a joke. I don't know. It's very strange.
Hundreds of staff fired from the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention late Friday have been reinstated, according to the American Federation of Government Employees. After a new round of layoff notices sent late Friday night, around 1,300 workers at the CDC, approximately 700 were reinstated on Saturday, while 600 remain laid off, according to the union, which represents federal workers. The employees who received incorrect notifications were never separated from the agency and have all been notified that they are not subject to reduction in force, said Andrew Nixon, Director of Communications for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Among reinstated employees are staff that publish the agency's flagship journal, Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, which sounds like a really fun magazine to subscribe to.
Oh, I've got stories about the MWWR if you want.
Oh, you even have it down to an acronym. According to Dr. Deborah Howery.
MWWR is what everybody calls it. I didn't even know what the
Oh, okay. So you only knew it by acronym. All right.
That is correct.
Who recently resigned as the agency's chief medical officer and deputy director for program and science. Howery and other high-level CDC officials resigned in August in protest over the firing of recently confirmed CDC director Dr. Susan Monarez. Athelia Christie, the incident commander for the measles response, was among hundreds of employees mistakenly fired on Friday. The annual total of measles cases in the U.S., now up to 1,563 cases since January, is the highest by a significant margin since measles was declared eliminated in America a quarter century ago. Staff were also reinstated at the CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, the Global Health Center, and the Public Health Infrastructure Center, which manages more than $3 billion in grants to 107 state and local governments to help build local public health workforces, said Dr. Brian Kastrucki, who is president and chief executive officer of the DeBaument Foundation, a nonprofit that advocates for public health workers. So tell me some of these interesting stories you have about the MMWR, Alex. This is...
So I attached this tweet to the space. I will read to you about from the CDC government's website that I've linked there about how publication happens at this quote unquote journal. You're with me? It's going to be a little bit long, but trust me, okay. There's a punchline. And you go.
All right.
It says several other differences exist. A major one is that, unlike medical journals, with a few exceptions, the content published in MMWR constitutes the official voice of its parent, CDC. One sign of this is the absence in MMWR of any official disclaimers, although most articles that appear in MMWR are not peer-reviewed in any way that submissions to medical journals are. To ensure that the content of MMWR comports with a CDC policy, every submission to MMWR undergoes a rigorous multi-level clearance process before publication. This includes review by the CDC director or designate top scientific directors at all CDC organizational levels, and an exacting review by MMWR editors. Articles submitted to MMWR from non-CDC authors undergo the same kind of review by subject matter experts within the CDC. By the time a report appears in MMWR, it reflects or is consistent with CDC policy.
So it's peer review in the sense that it is all the peers reviewing that they say yes to the article, but it is not peer review in the sense that it is supposed to actually be a rigorous review of the material provided and a certification that standards have been upheld. It's just a messaging certification.
They review that it's good propaganda, like it works, like it agrees with their policy. They don't review that it's actually good science. Just to be clear what's happening here. It's very hard to publish in this thing, but not because the scientific demands are high.
It's just because of the bureaucracy and the
right. This is, I mean, the MMWR is a place where miraculous, unbelievable, like literally not possible to believe studies like that masks have 80% effectiveness at preventing infection by COVID were published in, right? Like literally that they are better than vaccines, or at least the data that they told us about the vaccines, but couldn't stand behind. The masks apparently are better than that. So according to MWR, it is a travesty of a publication, and to call it a journal and imply that there's some scientific value in this thing, is quite something.
Well, during this furloughed period, don't worry. Everything is A-okay. In the departments, the health departments. Health is under control. CBS News, RFK Jr. suggests circumcision is linked to autism. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suggests there may be a link between autism and circumcision, while reasserting the unproven theory that Tylenol causes the disorder, and medical experts are pushing back against the claims. Quote, there's 2 studies that show children who are circumcised early have double the rate of autism. It's highly likely because they are given Tylenol, Kennedy stated during a cabinet meeting on Thursday. Now, I would just say that if anything were to cause someone to be, let's say, have a difficulty socializing, it would be, a group of people standing around them and coming at them with a sharp object aimed towards their genitals. That, to me, would cause a lot of difficulty.
Severe suspicion towards people, yes. One of your earliest formative experience.
So there you go. That's I certify this idea that there's a link between circumcision and autism.
Look, I will say, in a highly speculative manner, but not really. There's a well-known link which you can Google and find, lots and lots of studies. I don't know the quality of them. I haven't reviewed them myself. Make of it what you will. About the relation between gender dysphoria and autism. So it's a fascinating topic because it links, 2 different. I'm basically waiting for this to drop on the zeitgeist, because it links 2 different controversial topics together.
And that's what we need. That is exactly what we need to happen.
We're just bored right now. The controversy is just not there for us. We're not feeling anything these days, and so we're just waiting.
Because what we need is to have the discussion that Tylenol causes mass shootings. That's the link that we need.
Vaccines really did kill Charlie Kirk.
Circumcision is a surgical procedure that removes foreskin from a boy's penis. Now, again, this is one of those things where if the reader needs to have this explained to them, it's probably not a conversation they need to be a part of here.
That's not where you sail around the earth?
It is that. Yes, that is correct. Magellan, the circumcision.
Oh my God. Gator, have you heard the bit where Tim Dillon makes fun of Barry Weiss for interviewing a Mossad agent?
I have not.
Oh my God, I will put it up. We gotta listen to it. It's very much in the spirit of what you're pointing at here. I will find it and we can play it. Keep going.
For some, circumcision is a part of cultural religious practices. A 2025 study from Johns Hopkins Medicine found the prevalence of the practice had decreased nearly 5%, going from 54.1% to 49.3% from 2012 to 2022. Kennedy did not cite the studies he was referring to, but experts say potential matches, a 2013 study of 8 countries and a 2015 study from Denmark, which both suggested a link between circumcision and autism rates, have known issues. The 2013 study looked at circumcision rates in boys versus autism rates. The authors admitted that national and state averages may show correlation, not causation, and said their study may have mistakes, bias, and confounding. Circumcision practices are also tied to culture and religion, which also affect autism diagnoses and healthcare use, said Dr. Celine Grounder, CBS News medical contributor and editor-at-large for public health at KFF Health News. Confounding, which occurs when the relationship between an exposure and an outcome is distorted by the presence of a third variable. Now that I'm thinking about this sentence in tied to the fact that they even had to explain or felt the need to explain what circumcision was, I'm wondering exactly what they feel the utility of these explainers are, because I think if you're trying to describe the mathematics of confounding variables after just telling someone what circumcision even was, I don't know who is the target audience here.
I also
Confounding.
think it's strange that how they discredited the study is basically like the study listed its own potential problems, which every study does. And they're literally always the same things for the most part. It's like the list of things that this study that they say are bad with it are like literally every study says that.
Yeah, but like, so confounding, which occurs when the relationship between an exposure and an outcome is distorted by the presence of a third variable, is, quote, at the root of much of what RFK Jr. cites and claims, says Gounder. For example, early studies linked coffee drinking with higher heart risk, but smoking, popular among the coffee drinkers in the studies, was the true driver, not coffee. People eat more ice cream and go swimming more in the summer. Swimming, not eating ice cream, might lead to drowning, but a poorly designed study might conclude ice cream was the culprit. The 2015 study found that the risk of autism was higher among circumcised boys under age 5, but after age 5, the association disappeared. If circumcision truly caused autism, said Gounder, that association should continue even after age 5. I'm not sure why, but they're likely picking up on the fact that kids undergoing circumcision in the healthcare system have greater contact with the healthcare system and have parents with higher levels of education and income, all of which are associated with being diagnosed with autism at a younger age than other kids. That's just making shit up off the top of your head and speculating it, but okay. That association may disappear once kids start at school when teachers and counselors pick up on the symptoms. Other experts also oppose Kennedy's claims. There's absolutely no study establishing any causality, Dr. Stephen Abelitz, founder and medical director of Ocean Pediatrics, told CBS News. While some observational studies suggest possibly an association, there's no studies showing causality, and the conclusion by any of the credible medical resources is agreeing that there is no causal relationship between Tylenol, circumcisions, or vaccines to autism. Acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, and many cold and flu medications being at the base of the circumcision theory also doesn't add up in terms of timing, according to experts. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, children younger than 12 weeks should not be given acetaminophen unless instructed by their pediatrician, and most circumcisions happen before then with a local anesthetic. So that part, if true, I would find much more persuasive as a probably not because they're circumcising the kids and giving them Tylenol because we don't give them Tylenol. I think that would conclusively sort of disconnect the two ideas, as opposed to just sort of hypothesizing about, if it affected kids, it would also affect older people, which is not, that's just you making stuff up off the top of your head. Alex, any...
Yeah. No, it's, but Gator, they haven't established causality, right? Which has, of course, a very well-known way to do this. And when you do it, everybody agrees that it has been established.
Right.
Therefore, we can say
it's
with
like
certainty that it has not been established.
It's like when you see the articles talking about red meat, increasing colon cancer or something. All of the medical experts rush to be interviewed, saying that they haven't found a causal link. They've only found a correlation in a study.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's why they don't cover these things, prestigious newspapers, because they know that they are disreputable. Come the fuck on. Like, it is, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, file this under things that you can't bear to read if you've dug into a few, medical research papers in your life and realize that there's a, like, and again, right, it feels bad to like be shitting on like medical research, but it's just like people have no idea how broken the epistemology of medical research is.
I do,
and how to tell what works and what doesn't, or at least have a hope of like guessing better than random about what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, the other day you said to Matt Perkowski that he's the only person you've seen, criticizing these things, which took me off guard because I don't know, I've been criticizing statistical usage for years.
Yeah, no, you're right, and of course our famous celebrity friend does as well.
The statistician to the stars.
The statistician of the stars, indeed. No, I meant the sort of the very use of statistics as a foundation, like just in principle of building up an epistemology itself. Like, I think he hit a note that you hadn't hit before, but could now, and therefore be like could soon. But he went a little bit farther, and it was something that's been on my mind a lot. That yeah. Anyway, whatever.
What is
story,
that thing that's been on your mind? Perhaps we'll. I don't know if we'll address it right now, but perhaps we will.
I haven't
plan
found the
on-
right words, which is why I haven't written it up. But there is something about the fact that we should, statistics might be like a filter, like this could be interesting if you look there.
Mhm.
But I'm almost to the point where I don't. I just can't accept it as justification for anything. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you've got this interesting, maybe here, but the way you figure it out is by going in there and actually showing the mechanism or something else. Like you can't just stats your way into this, especially if it's not like some ridiculously repeatable thing that lots and lots of people can replicate and whatever, some much higher standard than what we have. But again, I have a very hard time articulating it, but I think there's something pernicious foundationally about building
absolutely
a worldview on statistics per se.
it's absolutely abysmal. I'll try to formulate
and entire
something
scientific fields are built on this, by the way.
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely. It's corrupt to the core, and I don't mean corrupt in the moral sense. I mean in the intellectual sense. It is absolutely corrupt.
You mean corrupt in the sense of what happens to your hard drive if your lightning hits it?
Yeah. Yes. It is absolutely 100% garbage in and garbage out. There are plenty of people in the world who understand the problems, but everyone who is, and I use everyone a little bit hyperbolically, but it's not so hyperbolic as to be useless. The entire apparatus operates basically off of illogic, covering up the problems with their logic in complexity, so that anyone who wants to point out the problems that in the epistemological tools they're using winds up having to combat with the complexity that they might be using in a given instance to demonstrate that person might not understand everything that they did, even though it's usually irrelevant to the actual point. So
but even if you do it correctly, as we have several times, I think during COVID, it doesn't matter. They don't care. They don't they can just ignore you, and you have no way of attracting their attention, and therefore, it doesn't matter. Right? I demonstrated algebraically that the Together trial papers could not have come from the same data set as they claim to have come. And well, okay, so what? What am I going to do about it? The journal is ignoring every challenge to this fucking paper. So
this is a good heuristic that I like to demonstrate as to how broken the system is and why it's broken. If you go back to 2015 and probably times before that, you'll see in statistical journals a demand for people to stop using p-values. Okay, and there's a very good reason to stop using p-values, and loosely speaking, I say that they are useless, and the way that they are used, they absolutely are useless. They do have utility in one narrow procedure, but it is not the procedure that anyone ever uses them for. So therefore, I say that they are useless. And in the statistics world, the properties of p-values are very well understood, and the limitations are well understood. And what has occurred has been language that is used to allow the people who are utilizing these p-values in science and other research type of things to sort of get away with using them. So the language is supposed to communicate the correct interpretation, but then when they use that language in their write-up, they then proceed to ignore what the true meaning of the language is supposed to be and just behave.
You mean
antithetical.
Shorthanding statistically significant as significant?
Exactly. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So there have been statistical journals that have written articles saying that, really, in order to fix things,
they've written please. They've
please stop using them. Okay. And the response has only been, give us something to replace them with. And that something is a specific yes or no, I did a good science. It is not, epistemological toolkits. give me something that is a yes or no answer, because what a p-value does for these people is give them a thing that they get to say yes or no to. That the p equals 0.05 cutoff, that 5% p-value is a magic number for them, and it gets them to be able to say, I get to publish or I don't get to publish. I have a result or I don't have a result. And that magic thing gives them a sense that they have done something productive. They don't have to do anything more unless someone starts to push, research they disagree with, in which case they get to remind everybody of the limitations. We need more study because it's inconclusive. You can't just take one study and blah, 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 right? It allows them to keep this game going in perpetuity. But because nobody has offered them a simple replacement, some magic thing that they can replace it with, a target that they can just get a yay or nay as a numerical conclusion at the end, they don't abandon the obviously broken thing. They don't abandon the obviously broken thing because they don't know what to do. We have no idea what to do.
But the thing is a little bit worse than that, because the thing that they want is the brokenness. Right. Like
ultimately, yes, that is a
the
feature,
entire
not a bug.
point of the plea is to, because the way p-values are used, never mind the fact that they are mathematically dubious. There's a secondary issue here, which is, even if you use Bayesian statistics, which could be a lot more like defensible, if you added the thresholds that they want, you would end up burying the uncertainty, which is kind of a big problem, right? And what p-values are used for now? To bury this, like, we don't know if it works or not. We think it works, maybe for you, I don't know. Who knows, really? It seems to have worked on some people at some point, and maybe you're in that kind of category or not.
I also think it's kind of funny when they conflate statistical significance and clinical significance. So you'll see a study that's like, we lowered their blood pressure, p equals 0.0001. The effect size, 1.1 millimeters of mercury. You're like, okay, who gives a shit? Even if it is true. And then I guess somewhat related, at Netflix, we did a whole bunch of A/B testing, and that produced p-values for all kinds of metrics. And somehow they were insane. We would get like p equals 1 to the negative 250th power, that like users clicked on this button more or something.
And
or it was even just silly stuff.
You would have just seen that result just by counting how many people did it versus how many people didn't, right?
No, the thing was, some of it was like weird network metrics where like you would never expect that kind. Like the change should not have resulted in something that changed that value, but you got like a crazy p-value that was.
I see what you're saying. So it was one of
allegedly,
it was the false positive. It was the false positive.
It was spurious. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the thing I will say is that I guess to sort of try to articulate a little bit better what I was saying before, that there's something deeply problematic. In physics, right? People try to make a complete world model with their work, right? They try to say, like, they try to make a mathematical representation of the world, right? Mm-hmm. That whichever side you look at it comes out the same, right? When you are trying to construct the same with a bunch of observations, I use the word loosely, which may or may not agree with each other, right? And you're trying to sort of throw them all at the wall and create a composite picture that, sort of, no matter how you ask the question, you get the same answer. That doesn't happen. So ultimately, what you get is a pastiche of, some, factoids that are true-ish, and plus some, terms of art of how we combine them, plus, what the hive mind sort of believes about this thing, plus whatever, at the end of the day, you don't have progress on understanding what you're supposed to do at all, which is sort of like much of what medicine is these days, because you're just poking at patterns. Like, it's not.
I think AI will solve this.
No.
Let's hope. Let's hope.
No.
My actual plan for how it might solve it is like you basically just set up a giant ass warehouse with all kinds of like cell cultures or whatever, and you just run like a gazillion experiments in parallel to go back to like the very fundamentals of things.
So just
and reestablish things. Yeah,
and then you'll find
it.
the elixir of life, and in order to get it approved, you'll need to not run an RCT.
Well, hey, I mean, if we RCT the elixir of life, like, should be pretty obvious. We don't even need a p-value for that one.
But then you'll be told that you don't have a meta-analysis and one study cannot be trusted, especially if it has a very strong result.
Well,
Like that
we can do a
obviously is matter of fraud.
multi-center study.
Yes.
Solve all the problems.
Yes, absolutely. Anyway,
We can also give people diluted elixir.
Way too far out. So just to make it a little bit more vulgar, Gator, I've attached the Tim Dillon. It's a little bit long, so you can feel free to sort of shut it down whenever you get bored.
All right. So I'm gonna navigate over to where you attach this here. Did you attach it to
the space?
Can you add it to the thread somewhere?
Guess
the problem is I have to do this from a different window, and I'm not going to join the space twice in order to get the link in the space.
Can I send it to you in a DM? Does that work?
Yeah, that'll work.
Great.
Yeah. So, if I were to quickly summarize for you, Alex, just so that you can conceptually understand, maybe you understand this already, but to sort of try to give you a correct understanding of the problems with a p-value. And put it in a home for where it actually could have utility and where it most certainly does not have utility. So the p-value, as you're well aware, is always based around this null hypothesis. The null hypothesis in something being that there is nothing going on, no association between the thing that you're studying and the thing that you are introducing to try to change the outcome of what you're studying. And the null hypothesis is always that there's no association. And this p-value is set up to where there is a range of outcomes that you would expect to get randomly, they say, where if you did this experiment, there is a chance you will see something that looks like there is a relationship. You will sometimes see what looks like a correlation when none truly exists. So this idea that there is a true thing out there, and even though there is no true relationship, we can just say Tylenol and autism. There is no true relationship, but if you conduct this study, there is a probability that you will see mathematically something that looks like a correlation, just due to the way that random things.
So,
occur.
For example, right, just for everybody's sake, if you don't know what foreskin is or whatever, if you use a knowingly fair coin and start flipping heads or tails, there is some chance that you will start getting a bunch of heads together, which doesn't necessarily mean that which might make you suspect that the coin is fixed, but I mean there is some chance that it just happened.
Right. Okay. So the p-value is a way of reporting this probability in these experiments. And there is the p-value reports itself in a range from 0 to 1, and 1 being like 100%. So 0% to 100%, but 1 represents this 100%. And when you have a p-value that is less than or equal to the number 0.05, which is 5% in percentage terms, if you have a value between 0 and 5%, you declare that you can reject the null hypothesis, which means that you are rejecting the idea there's nothing going on and saying there is a correlation, there is an association between the thing you introduced and the thing that you were studying. Now, we already said that this entire premise was set up about the fact that when you run these experiments, because of the random nature, as coin flips used by Alex as the example goes, you will get these outliers from time to time. So when you do the experiment, you say, okay, well, I'm going to reject this null hypothesis. I'm going to assume that there is something going on now because this was my result. And ultimately, we all would like to know, well, is there actually a result, that a correlation, something cause and effect wise, or is this something that was just due to the nature of randomness, right? Is it just an accident? And the p-value doesn't tell you. It just gives you a marking of this particular study that you did and how the possibly, quote, random values accumulated. Is this a circumstance where you happened to pick a coin and flip 10 heads in a row just out of coincidence? Or is it because it's a double-headed coin and you didn't actually look. Like those types of questions do not get answered by the p-value, but you treat it as if you did. Now, where this sort of procedure has utility is in a situation where you can run a cost-benefit analysis of being wrong, let's say 5% of the time, because the p-value cutoff is 5%. So Alex, let's imagine that you and I are in the widget making business. We're making these widgets and we just start producing them, and we have to make sure that we have quality control on here. But let's say our technology of quality control is not advanced enough to inspect every single unit to assure quality, so we have to take random samples of our output in order to try to determine the quality. In this scenario, we might be able to use a p-value like setup so that when we get one of these less than 0.05, these 5% anomaly looking things, we can afford to shut down our operation and do some sort of quality control cleanup on the manufacturing process, or do further inspection. We can pay the cost of doing the further inspection because we know that if everything is operating perfectly and we never have a problem in our production line, we will have a 5% false positive cost of saying there's a problem, right? 5% of the time.
That's worth it to us.
What's that?
But that's worth it to us. That 5% cost.
Right.
That's
worth it to us because we can say 5% of the time we know that this process, even if there's nothing wrong, is going to tell us that something is wrong, right? We have a threshold of errors, and this 5% of this time, this process is going to tell us that we have more than 5% errors in our in our output, or more than our threshold, rather, not 5% errors, but more than our threshold of errors in our production. And we would then be able to shut down and pay the cost of maintenance to make sure that everything is actually in tip-top shape using this signal. And we now can balance our costs because we don't know what world we're in. We don't know if we have a problem in our production line or not until we go and do the inspection. The sampling just gives us a way of trying to make sure that we are incurring a cost that we can afford to have regular maintenance that we can feel confident about in the long run. However, we take that logic and we just throw it to the wayside and try to determine what is true about the world in a medical or other sort of scientific status, whether it's social economics or something like that, in the social sciences or things like that. We try to determine what is true with this thing, which it is incapable, absolutely 100% logically incapable of doing. It is logically incapable of telling you what world it's in. It doesn't tell you if your process is broken and your output is actually producing a lot of defective widgets, and it doesn't tell you if everything is okay. It only gives you
it's worth looking into.
It tells you it's worth looking into. And that is why in the medical community you get these p-values, and if it's something people want to keep studying, they just go, we need more study. We need more study. We need more study. But if it benefits them, they say, hey, we found a correlation and an effect. We know there's an effect, right? Like they just decide on a whim whether they believe something or don't believe something. The rest is all politics. So,
and by the way, in terms of spurious correlations, to give an example that I think people might find fascinating, and this is not verified. I have not sort of, well, how would I verify it anyway? Once I explain what it is, you'll understand what I mean. But so treat it as speculation, okay? During COVID, there was a lot of hubbub about this anxiolytic drug called fluvoxamine working on COVID. But I started noticing this thing in the data of that particular drug, which is that it seemed to work better on women. Okay. Which is really strange. Like not a little bit better. I mean, like the vast majority of the signal you were observing was, concentrated on women. And that was very strange. And I hadn't seen that in any other drug. So I started paying attention a little bit more to it. I went and looked at more studies. And then, I started looking at the outcomes that these trials were looking at. And this wasn't for all trials. But in some trials, it was like the outcome that they were looking at is, did you go to ER complaining about COVID-like symptoms? Okay. Now, consider this, right? If you're taking an anxiolytic drug, a drug that makes you less anxious, Are you less likely to show up in ER complaining about COVID-like symptoms? Regardless of whether you have COVID or not, right? But they found some correlation, especially in women who are apparently more anxious. And they're like, well, I think it works with COVID.
Oh, wait, does that also prove that it actually works as an anxiolytic drug too?
I mean, we knew that already. Supposedly, it's a generic drug that was
It's an
originally approved.
SSRI. I don't know if I believe that they work so well, but
Yeah.
maybe a difference of 5 points on the whatever scale is enough to make you not go to the ER and you just go to your doctor.
Yeah, I don't know about its SSRI functionality, but I think the anxiolytic one is more established. But whatever. Point being, you see what happens here, right? You take something that has some function, some function, where you could actually see, if you look very carefully, and if somebody describes the procedure to you like I did, how it could have the effect you're saying it has, but the meaning of the effect is not what the obvious meaning would be, that it cures COVID, but more like you're more chill, therefore less likely to show up at the hospital unless it's really a big deal.
Well, Alex,
Anyway.
if you want me to give you this time, it's a even worse than you think sort of thing when it comes to epistemology. Like I already just described sort of the problems logically with using a p-value in science. But if you want one kicker and rabbit hole to go down, the philosophy of science has been a long time evolving question. What is something? What is what they call the demarcation point between science and pseudoscience, right? The pseudoscience is a pejorative term for basically any sort of behavior or idea or manner in which people are arriving at their conclusions that sort of what they call looks scientific but isn't scientific. And for the longest time, not by strict formality, but sort of a loose sort of agreement, scientists operate with the idea that the demarcation point between science and pseudoscience is what they call falsification, right? I hope many people have heard of this. I'm sure everyone in the audience here has heard of the idea of falsification. If you don't have a hypothesis for something that is falsifiable, the thing you are trying to study is not a scientific question. You need to be able to have a hypothesis that can come up with a study where you can get a yes or no outcome that is able to falsify the hypothesis in order to navigate. And this comes from Karl Popper, who had a sort of philosophy that is what I would say running the show in science by and large by habit, not necessarily again by deep articulation, but it is the ghost of Karl Popper that sort of controls majority of the way that science operates. And that is on the idea that we are doing a process of falsification, which is what the p-value is supposed to be helping people do. This rejecting this null hypothesis or failing to reject this null hypothesis, as the language goes, is a process of falsification. So because we are at this, we've taken this side of the demarcation point where we are doing something where we are claiming it is falsifiable, we are now operating in a scientific realm. Now, Alex, philosophically speaking, do you know what the process of falsification was sort of replacing from a logic standpoint, a practice?
My next token generator says something like verificationism, but I don't know what that means.
It was more induction. Okay.
Induction.
Science of the past was basically this has worked every single time so far. Therefore, this is the way the world works, right? We sort of deduce the way that things are, infer the way things are working by repeatedly performing experiments and sort of trying to come up with ideas about the nature, the laws that govern these things. And we continue to run these experiments and get results that are in line with the things that we're saying that our understandings predict, right? This is induction. But induction has flaws in a grand sense, in a metaphysical sense, because we can never really truly know that tomorrow things are going to be identical to the way they are today. We have no assurance that the laws of nature, let's say, are going to behave identically tomorrow. So induction winds up being a problem where it's like, well, how many times do we have to repeat this item before we observe what we needed to observe to understand that our understanding was wrong, right? So induction has issues.
So,
So-
sorry, let me just sort of summarize, fast forward, hear what you're saying. But basically, if I understand correctly, the problem was, well, how do I know that the sun will come up? Just because it's been coming up so far doesn't mean it'll come up tomorrow. And the answer was, why don't we use p-values?
Well, close. So, but falsification from Karl Popper logically replaced this induction problem, because when you have falsification, you never know what's true, but you can prove when you get a falsifiable result that some hypothesis was at least partially incorrect in its formation, because the outcome you got was not supposed to be possible, right? Okay,
it's the black swan thing, right? Where if you see every swan you see is white, you might believe that swans are white, but if somebody shows up with a black swan, a single black swan is enough to falsify the position that swans are white.
So while there are problems,
but I might say, well, that's not a swan, then, is it? Anyway,
while there are problems metaphysically speaking, if you really go down the rabbit holes of thought with falsification, even in the hard sense, there are some issues with it. It at least on the surface sounds like a laudable understanding, just using your black swan example, right? It seems to at least give you a way of filtering ideas, right? A procedure, a set of procedures. So this becomes the demarcation point. But now we throw in p-values and we talk about where we're going from a hard case of seeing a black swan to now these fuzzy questions, these things that don't have true yes or no answers. Seeing a black swan invalidates the idea that all swans are white. That's a logical certainty, right? But all the questions we want to know are vague in terms. Does this drug help people with this condition? People being a huge amalgamation with all sorts of complexities. The questions that we want to ask are so fuzzy. And now we don't even really want to know yes or no on that question. We want to kind of know if it might help some people sometimes, right? Like the questions are all fuzzy and the tools we're using are now fuzzy. And because they're fuzzy, Alex, and because that p-value is not something where when we get it, we know what universe we're in, whether or not there is actually a real correlation or not, a real cause and effect thing between what we're introducing and what we're studying. Because we don't know that, we have to conduct more tests. We now have to make these tests replicate. And what would replication be a synonym for?
Repetition.
Induction.
I don't know.
Induction.
Right.
So we have come back. Okay.
Right.
Which is where I jokingly say that all of science is pseudoscience, because we've crossed the demarcation point from falsification back into induction, because in order to fix the problem, we have to now have replicable studies. We have to have, it's the replication crisis, as they say, and we need to get these studies to replicate, which means we are hoping that induction will save us from the problems that loose falsification was unable to.
Yes. We the inductive power of our falsification is not big enough.
So if you want to go down those holes, I invite you to, because it's maddening. It's absolutely maddening. There isn't a single like coherent philosophy of science operating out there.
Look,
but when people
ultimately, again, like in recent years, I've come to understand that even physics that is supposed to be quote unquote hard science has a lot of wiggle room, right? But at the very least, they have the dignity of putting together a model, a one model where every question you can ask, it will give you the answer from the scientific community. And if you can show that the answer is not reliably not coming up in some way that hopefully doesn't cost you $1 billion to try and figure this out, you can get people to it's very, very hard for people to not pay attention to that. In medicine, there is no the model, right? Like they can say aspirin helps, and then I don't know, laxatives help. And you're like, what if I take aspirin and laxatives? We have no idea. We don't know. Like we couldn't tell you anything. In fact, forget we said anything. we take no responsibility if you take both those things at the same time. It's like, okay, what if I eat eggs and then take aspirin? What do you know about that? No idea. Nothing. Our trial did not. The subject did not eat eggs, as far as we know. So we couldn't tell you how these things are going to interact, right? It's like, okay, so what do you have, other than a list of facts which may or may not be true, but like you don't have a generator at all. There's nothing behind that. I don't know, man. It's dark. Anyway, we need to move on, I feel, because our audience, if it hasn't, the people who are listening to us right now are heroes, and they have my full respect. Thank you for your service, everybody.
Well, the benefit is that the live audience, if we've held them captive in prison, or we have their full attention, and for the podcast version people, they actually get these nice chapters like the platforms like Spotify's put on them. So if they want to skip that part, they can skip that part. It's a nice trade-off.
Just as a reward, can you please play the
Tim
Dillon thing? I think you'll see why I'm linking it to your whole this is what circumcision is thing.
Yossi Cohen, welcome to Honestly.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, a lot of people on the internet believe that you are my boss because they believe that I am a member of the Mossad.
Oh,
but
really?
This is actually the first time that I'm meeting you, or at least as far as I know, any member of the Mossad. So I'm very excited to meet you.
I'm the first one that you've ever met, but
there might be, I might have met people.
Might be others that the world.
First, I want to set the table for people because the Mossad is an agency that is just shrouded in so much conspiracy and propaganda. Simple question, Yossi. What is the Mossad?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tim Dillon Show. A friend of the show, Barry Weiss, did a fascinating interview with a member of the Mossad, and she really looked into the process, and it was incredibly interesting. So what I want to do now is I wanted to bring someone in to explore an area where I am completely clueless. I mean, completely in the dark. And I wanted somebody to kind of walk me through an area of study that I know nothing about, just like Barry did. So I want to thank you for coming, Chloe. You work at Dairy Queen.
That is true, yes.
What is Dairy Queen in your mind? What is it? Because people say that they serve ice cream there, and I'm not even super sure what that is.
What's ice cream?
Yeah, what is ice cream? Like, what is it?
Oh, it's like the frozen dessert ice cream.
Like a little treat.
It is a treat, yeah.
Like a frozen kind of it's like an ice.
It's sweet. It can be soft or hard. It's chocolate, vanilla.
And those are
the flavors.
Flavors?
Yeah.
So there's different flavors of ice cream.
There's many flavors of ice cream.
So that's something interesting to know too.
Sure, yeah.
Now, what is Dairy Queen to ice cream? What do they do?
Dairy Queen, it's a pretty popular franchise.
How many Dairy Queens does the Mossad own, though? Like, how many Dairy Queens are just Mossad operation front points?
We will never know. Perhaps Barry could ask that question.
Because I think that would actually be a nice way to get into the community and get secret information, is to operate the local Dairy Queen.
Absolutely.
And just have the regulars.
I mean, I was listening to an actual former CIA agent talking about recruiting assets and whatnot. And he said, like, one of the best recruitments they made is the photocopier guy. Right? You never know. The most humble.
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Learn all sorts of things.
Well, moving on to some other topics here before we get into some deeper things here. Alex, you may know that there's a gubernatorial race in California that's well underway. And
is there?
Katie.
Is the Newsom not going to be in the running again?
Right. That's my understanding.
Somehow this news passed me by, maybe by virtue of not caring about California.
Katie Porter, Tylenol enthusiast and representative of the 47th District of California, believes she should be elected the next goober. And she got attention this week when she threatened to walk out of the middle of an interview.
Redistricting. What do you think of the governor's plan?
I support the governor's plan.
What do you say to the 40% of California voters who you'll need in order to win, who voted for Trump?
How would I need them in order to win, man?
So, well, unless you think you're going to get 60% of the vote. You think you'll get 60%? Everybody who did not vote for Trump will vote for you. That's what you're thinking.
In a general election, yes. If it is me versus a Republican, I think that I will win the people who did not vote for Trump.
What if it's you versus another Democrat?
I don't intend that to be the case.
So how do you not intend that to be the case? Are you going to ask them not to run?
No, I'm saying I'm going to build the support. I have the support already in terms of name recognition. And so I'm going to do the very best I can to make sure that we get through this primary in a really strong position. But let me be clear with you. I represented Orange County. I represented a purple area. I have stood on my own 2 feet and won Republican votes before. That's not something every candidate in this race can say. If you're from a deep blue area, if you're from LA or you're from Oakland, you don't have an experience.
But you just said you don't need those Trump voters.
Well, you asked me if I needed them to win.
So you don't think
I feel like this is unnecessarily argumentative. What is your question?
The question is the same thing I asked everybody, that this is being called the empowering voters to stop Trump's power grab. Every other candidate has answered this question. This is not argumentative.
And I said I support it.
So, and the question is, what do you say to the 40% of voters who voted for Trump?
Oh, I'm happy to say that. It's the do you need them to win part that I don't understand. I'm happy to answer the question as you have it written, and I'll answer it.
And we've also asked the other candidates, do you think you need any of those 40% of California voters to win? And you're saying, no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote I can. And what I'm saying to you is that...
Well, to those voters, okay, so you...
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it. Okay. Thank you.
You're not going to do the interview with us?
Nope, not like this. I'm not. Not with 7 follow-ups to every single question you ask.
Every other candidate has answered our follow-ups.
I don't care. I want to have a pleasant, positive conversation in which you ask me about every issue on this list. And if every question you're going to make up a follow-up question, then we're never going to get there.
Ms.
And
Porter,
we're just going to circle around.
I am an investigative
I have never had to do
reporter.
this before, ever.
You've never had to have a conversation with
to end
a
an
reporter?
interview.
Okay, but every other candidate has done this.
What part of I'm me? I'm running for governor because I'm a leader. So I am going to make...
So you're not going to answer questions from reporters? Okay, why don't we go through? I will continue to ask follow-up questions because that's my job as a journalist, but I will go through and ask these, and if you don't want to answer, you don't want to answer. So nearly every legislative...
I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you, and I don't want this all on camera.
I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you either. I would love...
So that clip was catching wildfire, and some more issues with Katie Porter and let's say her temperament came out that have caught eyeballs. This was like a Zoom recording call that she was giving, and one of her staffers got in the frame and upset Miss Porter, and this was also released this week.
You ready for stat number 2?
I am.
All right. $632, which is how much you save in fuel and maintenance costs when you replace your traditional car with an EV, with an electric vehicle. So I lease a Chevy Bolt. It is the best car that I have ever owned. I just plug it into the garage, 3-hole prong plug, and I never have to go to the gas station.
That's awesome. And $632 is real money. And I know here at UCI, we have a National Fuel Center Research Center, and they're also doing work on how to make electric vehicles affordable, including for low and moderate income people, working moms, single moms like me, people who really could benefit from an extra $632 in their pocket. And it's also not just the individual savings, but it's also the total savings for our economy. So I'm on the oversight committee, you might know, and that is where we did a study recently this fall in September. And what it showed is if we don't electrify our transportation sector, that we're going to lose more than 500,000 Californians dying prematurely to air pollution and other problems. And the state could lose... Get out of my fucking shot.
I wanted to tell you that that's actually incorrect. It's not that it's electric vehicles. It's that if we don't meet the commitments under the Paris Climate Accord.
Okay, it does. Okay, you also were in my shot before that. Stay out of my shot. Okay, I'm going to start again with...
I'm going to start again after I just bitched my staffer out. No, Alex, if someone is in your shot, do you tend to read them the riot act live on?
Look, Is this coming? Do you have whistleblower accounts of my behavior in Zoom calls in my company, or why are you asking?
Oh man, the whistles are pretty loud, man. I'm getting tired of hearing them with your conduct on Zoom calls.
I've been, I have high standards as a employer. Sometimes
interestingly enough, Katie
but she
Porter
doesn't want
there,
an unhappy experience, which is that is not definitely something definitely I would not have said. Let me put it this way.
Well, interestingly enough, Katie Porter's support in light of these we'll call them tantrums on tape, are losing her support much faster than Jay Jones were with his my colleagues across the aisle deserve to have their kids murdered in front of them comments. He actually has maintained his support. Katie Porter's is losing support quickly for her comments. So there's an interesting case study in what
case of sexism in the Democratic Party, obviously.
Yeah, there's a interesting case study in how people's sensibilities over things occur.
Yes.
Yelling at the staffer for being in your fucking shot is definitely a faux pas. It is not. That kind of behavior is frowned upon here. Now that we have no perfect segue for this, but Alex, it has been a while. It has been a while, and it is time for everyone's favorite segment.
It's time for everyone's favorite segment. Gator, 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 annoys Alex. Gator, 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 annoys Alex. Gator, Gator, annoys Alex. Gator, Gator, annoys Alex. Gator, 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 annoys Alex. Gator annoys Alex.
Oh God, no.
What have you gotten the most wrong? What is your biggest fuck up ever?
I know I have something in mind, but now I'm struggling to remember. Do you know what? Do you have an idea of what?
How about the Hunter Biden laptop controversy? How you handled that?
Well, how I handle it, or how the actual thing I said on the Trigonometry podcast, which provoked it. I mean, there's what I did in the aftermath of it, and there's what actually provoked it. I mean, I don't think I was. What I regret. I mean, I wrote about this, or spoke about this, or both. What I regret was, and it really wasn't something controllable by me in advance, but I regret that I was not speaking as clearly as I should have been in that conversation, right, so as to be understood. I mean, I was speaking colorfully. I say, saying that I wouldn't have cared if he had the corpses of children in his basement, right? I knew that was colorful, but I do that. I've done that since. I speak that way occasionally because it's less boring, and in the fullness of time, that i.e. not clipped out by some malicious psychopath, I can justify the very utterance, that it was colorful, right? I mean, I'm not misrepresenting my views. I mean, where it's maybe there's some exaggeration for effect, it's within proportion to what I'm actually saying, and it's all defensible, and I don't feel bad about it. I don't regret it in the end. What was regrettable about that interview was that I really wasn't speaking as clearly as I sometimes can. I mean, there's a range of. I mean, sometimes you get me at the mic, and I speak more or less exactly the way I will want to have spoken in retrospect, and sometimes I'm a bit of a mess, and that's just a neurological problem, right? It's like I really don't have complete control over that. So in that case, I was, for whatever reason, I might have had a migraine, I might have not slept well the night before. Who knows what happened? It was not my A game, certainly. And I also got interrupted at a moment where I was in the middle of a thought, and the half thought that came out was genuinely misleading. And so, yeah, I mean, it was kind of a perfect storm there. But the truth is, even as it was in context, if one wanted to understand what my actual view was, it was understandable. I mean, it was clear that I didn't know what the policy should have been journalistically around the release of the laptop. When Rudy Giuliani announces, 10 days before the election that he's got this laptop from hell, what should the New York Times have done? Again, that's still a toss up. I mean, again, they had to have known that when Comey reopened the spurious email investigation the last time around, that is what got Trump elected, right? That there's really no debate about that. I mean, you could say that, it shouldn't have been that close in the first place. And so there are all these other reasons that you can ascribe to Trump's victory. But the fact that it was that close, that was decisive. So this clearly had been held as an October surprise. And so to merely just play his game by slavishly putting it on the front page of the New York Times and struggling to get to ground truth for the 10 days remaining. Again, I still don't know what journalists should have done there. And I think it's totally reasonable for them to have said, this looks like Russian disinformation. This got weirdness all over it. The fact that Rudy Giuliani is telling us a story about an abandoned laptop in some computer store, none of this sounds right, and we're not going to figure this out in time. So let's just circle the airport here for 10 days so as not to screw up another presidential election. That strikes me still as the sanest policy, given what we knew at the time, and also given what has been revealed in the aftermath. I mean, what was on that laptop that I should care about? Is there anything? I still haven't heard the thing that I really need to care about. I guess the reason why I don't regret any of it is it is the thing that finally broke the spell around my engagement with Twitter. I mean, it was that and seeing what was happening to Elon's brain, that combination. It dialed up so much noise in my life coming from the right. I mean, I'd had the equivalent noise that came from the left with the Ezra Klein episode, which really was at the same scale. I mean, in some ways, it wasn't at the same. Maybe it wasn't at the same scale online for the average viewer, but it was at a bigger scale in my world because left of center it was coming from voices that I actually cared about. I mean, there's virtually nothing that was coming from the right that I cared about because these were Pizzagate lunatics who were aiming their fire at me. But it convinced me to get off social media, and so that was I don't regret that at all.
All right, Mr. Malignant Psychopath / Pizzagate lunatic. Any thoughts on Sam?
I was looking for, did he say that here? I was looking for material and I kind of switched off.
Yes. You were the malignant psychopath, I believe.
I think the Pizzagate fanatic is Posobiec that he's talking about. He might
I get that.
And Poso in his head. Or what's that? I mean, it might be a neurological issue for all I know. Apparently,
he did say he has some neurological problems.
I mean, now it's spread to himself. It's this whole might be a neurological thing. And at least there, he's speaking on his field of expertise, so that's something. Anyway, he still fails to this day to like. There's so much I could say. Obviously, right? You understand this, but he still to this day fails to address the actual facts of the situation, which is that the laptop got in the hands of the Trump campaign sometime in August. And I believe it went from Giuliani to Bannon, who actually got the ball rolling and sent it to the New York Post in September. Okay. So this thing that clearly it was held, right? It was clearly held. He's been saying this, like, this has been his point of view for forever. It might have been, slow rolled a little bit. Like I can find like a week of time in there, but honestly, to me, it just looks like what happens if you get something big and then you find the person that knows the people in the press, and then they send it to them, and the press then needs to vet it and look into it, and then a couple of weeks pass on every step, and you end up at October 14th, where the news blows up. So, okay, this is knowable stuff, right? You don't need to guess about, and when I say it's knowable, sorry, I say this because this information comes from Hunter Biden's lawsuit against the person with the laptop repair guy. Okay, that's how we know when the laptop went to Giuliani. So if you want to say Hunter Biden is an unreputable character and we shouldn't trust his lawsuits, fair enough. But okay, I could accept that. But like to a degree that we trust the guy at all with the basic facts, and I don't think anybody questions that particular one. No, it's not clear that it was an October surprise. Actually, I think what happened is the guy gave the feds the laptop the year before. And he was waiting for them to do something, and they did nothing. And then the time of the elections was coming up, and he was like, shit. Like, they're really just going to go ahead with it and have a whole election and just not mention this at all, which is why by August. So in a sense, there was pressure from the election date. I could see that. But it's not exactly that, like, Giuliani was sitting on it or anything, which is what Harris implies there. And, you know, why am I focusing on that part? I don't know, man. Like, because there's so much like subjective shit that he talks about there. First of all, let me finish the thought and I'll continue with the first of all. There's so much subjective stuff like that. I at least want to nail down a few things that we do know, and it doesn't have to do with me and what clip I cut, and you know if I'm psychotic or you know whatever. Okay, factually, he still can't. Years later, he still can't fucking get his facts straight. Secondly, was the fact that he had an ambivalent sense about the New York Times covering the story or not what stood out to you about what he fucking said?
No. And since you're asking me, and well, you know, this isn't scripted part, what the issue with what he said was you know, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Konstantin Kisin, and I know that you aren't, but the series of questions that Konstantin asked him were they gave him an out several times, but he still took the bait, or didn't take the bait, and actually doubled down on what he was saying and worked himself into a corner several times. As it was, he himself said it was a conspiracy. Was it a conspiracy to deny Donald Trump the White House? Absolutely, but it was warranted. That sentence that he approved
was a left-wing conspiracy to begin with, and then he denied that it was left-wing, as if anybody gave a shit.
Right. But so like that's where Konstantin like was asking him several qualifying questions, and he just started to like whittle his answer and try to fudge it. But the ultimate conclusion was he was perfectly fine with a group of people getting together and deciding Donald Trump cannot be permitted to be president, so that we will activate these levers that we have to deprive information or even look into a topic that people would be using to possibly justify their decisions based off of. And then he tried to defend it by going, if an asteroid is hitting, about to hit Earth and people got together to discuss what to do about it, is that a conspiracy? That was his defense. It wasn't because he was iffy on whether or not the New York Times should have put more resources into it. Like it was Twitter, it was Facebook, it was all of the social platforms actually going and removing content and people themselves discussing the topic, blocking the New York Post from even having access to the social media accounts.
They activated features they have that were before that point only used for child exploitation material, which prevents you from sending a link in a direct message. That's the level that they went to. And by the way, it's fascinating because like you can really write a whole fucking book about this, and it's ridiculous how small a topic you can write so much about. But Harris has shifted his position in ways that I don't think he fully realizes. Nobody has sat him down to actually like walk him through this. But early on, he was like, "Yeah, no, Twitter. I mean, they did what they did. It's totally. I'm cool with it." Later, he says, no, well, they shouldn't have done that. But the New York Times, well, should they? Again, the thing that nobody cares about. Yes, we expect the New York Times to sit on the story. Unfortunately, that's where we are, and nobody really expected anything better from them. What we wanted was the New York fucking Post to put its story out and have it go through social media. That's what, like, I have heard 0 people complain to me about the New York Times not covering this. I mean, maybe over time we were like, hey, months have passed now, and it's pretty sure that it's pretty real, and you're still not writing anything about it, which, by the way, is why Sam Harris appears to not know what was on the laptop, because he doesn't tell you how much effort he has made or not made to find what was on that laptop.
Well,
but
he also did cover those tracks by going, he didn't care about what possible corruption the Bidens had. So even if he discovered that on the laptop, that goes into the category of I don't care what corruption they had because Trump did Trump University or something.
Yep. No, it's the whole thing is ridiculous, but it's fascinating to me to keep watching how he rewrites the past, because it's now at like version 16 or something, where it's now like, oh, I wasn't on my best game and whatever, and yeah, I could have spoken more clearly and stuff like that. It's like, okay, where's my apology, bitch? Right, you were going around saying that I edited your stupid fucking clip to make you sound worse than you were, to put words in your mouth or whatever. Like,
but would you agree with my assessment that the actual offending idea was that he was perfectly okay with a large consortium of people conglomerating on to suppress a news story from cycling?
Absolutely.
And that is
and he still holds that idea and he still will defend it. I think the keyword under which he propagates it is called democracy is not a suicide pact, which means, let me explain in detail what that means. It means that if you think, and the word think here is very important, if you think that what is about to happen is really, really bad, you are allowed to subvert democracy, because democracy is not a suicide pact. Now, funnily enough, he is bastardizing a quote when he says democracy is not a suicide pact, which the quote is, the Constitution is not a suicide pact. I think referring to the fact that the Constitution itself has ways to revise itself in it, i.e., if you don't like it, there's ways to change it. Completely different from what he uses, democracy is not a suicide pact to me.
Along the lines of it's not a suicide pact, or democracy in his version is not a suicide pact, is the idea that he would personally be okay with Joe Biden being elected president, but also being in like a perpetual pseudo coma to where it would just be a committee of people who are unelected and possibly just high staffers making decisions, or the cabinet making decisions that the president would be making in his stead, I guess, by some sort of process that is yet to be determined. But also,
I believe
be okay
he
with
exactly this recently. Like, I'm not something like it. I'm not sure if you're quoting him or not. He has said something.
It's a paraphrasing of his idea. Yes, he has said it multiple times. Like his idea, in his mind, he apparently knew that Joey was not all there upstairs, and he was okay with that himself. He was resigned to this fact that Joey was not all okay, but he viewed Donald Trump as such a threat that he would prefer accepting the fact that Joey was not all okay upstairs, and that what we would get instead as an actual functioning administration, or the way that the administration would function, would be that the cabinet and other high-ranking officials in the administration would do all of the decision making and the executing of duties that they were otherwise designated to perform. But that was by no means the honest sort of representation of what the Biden campaign was. It was, in fact, a cover-up of his abilities and his cognitive state in order to get this thing that Sam Harris was supposedly comfortable with, right? Like he is not upset that they covered it up, because the outcome would have been fine to him.
No, and ultimately, I don't know that he comes out and says this at any point, but it's the only sort of sane, complete accounting that you can do with his various statements, which is that he would be happy if there was a sort of a super layer above the democratic sort of process that was able to sort of, override or, sidestep or whatever, right, the beliefs of the plebs based on what a council of experts would sort of decide, sort of thing. And, you might have somebody like a supreme leader that is sort of, convenes this council of experts and is, acts according to their verdicts or something like that, which of course is the how the government of Iran works, right? The people that he would probably decry as genocidal mullahs or whatever. But it's kind of funny, because ultimately that's what it comes down to, right? If you either you trust people to actually make decisions and you ride or die, or you say, well, no, like people can like have their say, quote unquote, but at the end of the day, the adults right, need to be in charge, which means nothing because, how do you find who the adults are? And there we enter the famous Sam Harris infinite regression, whereby he will claim that he's not an expert himself, right? But he speaks to experts. And then if you ask him, well, but how do you know who are the experts? He's like, I'm really good at finding experts. So
he has a nice Rolodex. He has a nice Rolodex.
I mean, and he can smell it. He can smell it. He can smell the right experts. He literally said like about me again that like he could smell from a mile that I wasn't serious. So that's why he didn't take my work seriously. Anyway, long story short, it all comes back to Sam Harris, and Sam Harris really knows, what who should be trusted and who should not. And even if he doesn't know the answer to a question, he knows who to ask. So there, some Harrisocracy. That's what we're dodging, really.
Well, thus concludes everyone's favorite segment, Gator annoys Alex.
Were you? Did I deliver the rant to you?
Oh yes, absolutely. Now it's been a while here. If anyone wants to come up and comment on anything that we've discussed so far, go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll get you on up here to comment while we move on to what's possibly going to be, I guess, our last topic for today. We have plenty of topics always on the cutting room floor, Alex, and someday we need to get back to what's going on in Iran. It's been a month and a half that things have been going on that I've been tracking, but we haven't really had an opportunity to talk about them.
We'll have to pay attention.
To summarize things that are currently on the cutting room floor in Iran, just so that you get an idea, over the last several months in the aftermath of the bombing we did to, quote, knock out their nuclear capabilities, there have been many economic problems in Iran. They have water crises. They have a lack of water. They have a lack of power. They are cracking down on Bitcoin, which is being used to try to compensate for their currency collapse. So they're having a myriad of problems. And in this last several weeks, there is an interesting sort of turn where the European Union is bringing back sanctions against Iran, and it appears that there is sort of disagreement internally in the upper parts of government as to what the correct approach is. And there are signs, not conclusive signs, but signs in their laws and their behavior on the ground that attitudes are shifting, and that there are some sea changes possibly around. There's a headscarf law that is being relaxed, and there's increasing number of women who are not wearing the full headdress and going out into public, which used to be a verboten sort of thing, where there were laws against women going out in public without their coverings. Those are being relaxed in places.
As of when are you saying that this is happening?
Last couple months.
Yeah, I think that's wrong. I think that's false.
Okay.
Well, whoever's feeding you this is misleading. I think the headscarf laws have been getting relaxed like since before the quote unquote 14-day war. So yeah.
Oh, so you're asking me if there has been any relaxing prior to that too? Meaning that.
Well, I mean,
you're agreeing that there is a relaxing.
A delta, right? Even the water stuff or whatever.
I am not necessarily trying to have a specific causal chain. I am more trying to talk about the atmosphere as it currently stands afterwards, not necessarily that they are all causally linked.
Yeah. The question is this a change in reality situation, whether or this is just what Iran is? Like, have they been cracking down on Bitcoin before?
So to clarify, I am not putting a causal tie between the attack and the headscarf thing. I am.
No, but even without the causal element, I'm just saying, like, is this new?
I will try to go to see when those were relaxed when we possibly cover it next week or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
But those are certain things that are occurring. So the last topic I think for today is going to be Letitia James, who is now, depending on the order that you call these, number 2 or number 3 of the enemies list being attacked by Donald Trump. So to cut to the chase before we go and revisit, New York AG Letitia James indicted in Virginia after an investigation by Trump's DOJ. A grand jury in Virginia indicted New York attorney Letitia James on Thursday, marking the second Trump foe, so they're counting him as number 2, foe to face federal prosecution in recent weeks. James was charged with 1 count of bank fraud and 1 count of making false statements to a financial institution. The indictment alleges that James bought a house in Norfolk, Virginia in 2020 with a mortgage that required her to use it as a second home, but she ultimately rented it to a family and used it as an investment property. It accuses her of misrepresenting how the house was to be used to get a lower interest rate. The indictment says James purchased the home for $137,000 and borrowed $109,600 by getting more favorable lending terms and a larger seller credit. She allegedly saved herself $18,933 over the life of the loan. Lindsay Halligan, the acting U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, said in a statement, "No one is above the law. The charges as alleged in this case represent intentional criminal acts and a tremendous breach of the public trust." James called the charges baseless in a video statement. "This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system," she said. James' attorney, Abby Lowe, said James flatly and forcefully denies these charges, and he said is deeply concerned that this case is driven by President Trump's desire for revenge. James has drawn Mr. Trump's ire for years. Her office sued the president and the Trump Organization for fraud in 2022, leading a judge to issue a 9-figure judgment against the company. Mr. Trump has referred to James as scum, corrupt, and racist. The indictment came exactly 2 weeks after a grand jury in the same Virginia courthouse voted to indict another Trump adversary, former FBI Director James Comey, on charges of lying to Congress. James was indicted by a different grand jury than the one that indicted Comey, according to a source familiar with the matter. Last month, Mr. Trump publicly urged Attorney General Pam Bondi to look into Comey, James, and a third longtime Trump antagonist, Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California. In May, CBS News reported that the Justice Department had launched a criminal probe into James around alleged mortgage fraud. 3 months later, the Justice Department expanded its investigation into James for her office's handling of its Trump Organization probe. The mortgage fraud investigation began after William Polt, director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, wrote a letter to Bondi alleging that James has in multiple instances falsified bank documents and property records to acquire government-backed assistance and loans and more favorable loan terms. Polt claimed James received deals on mortgage terms by falsifying information related to several different properties over the course of decades, not including the 2020 purchase that led to Thursday's charges. Polt's allegations include listing another home in Norfolk, Virginia as her principal residence, despite living and working in New York, buying a 5-family property in Brooklyn with a loan that is only available for homes with 4 units or less, and an accusation that in 1983, James' father signed a mortgage document stating they were husband and wife. So that's the chase of the situation that we are now. So inside of the allegations of this article are repeated far and wide right now, which is that this is a political prosecution. Now, Alex, when you think about political prosecutions, what would you say actually would define something along the lines of a political prosecution? What would be the criteria of something being purely political in nature?
Well, you choose your target, and then you set the authorities on them, and you say find something.
So you have the target first, and you conduct the investigation to find something that you pin that on them. Right?
Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime, I think is a good summary.
Okay, so that's perfect, Alex. Thank you very much.
So it can't apply to women, first of all.
Thank you very much. Yes. for hitting that nail straight on the head when it comes to possibly what we would be discussing in terms of a political prosecution. I would like to go back to 2018, where Letitia James, July 2018, where Letitia James posted on her own Facebook page a campaign event that she was speaking at.
Everyone is talking about this blue wave, but it's important that this blue wave include individuals who have historically been ignored. It's important that we talk to immigrants. It's important that we talk to dreamers. It's important that we talk to residents of public housing. We've got to engage every voter at this point in time. This is not the time to sit on our laurels and think that people are just going to magically come out and vote, because they don't believe in politics and they don't believe that politics can transform their lives. And what we've got to do is educate them to the importance of politics and how power, particularly in the labor movement, can transform
So at that campaign event, she promised to get into office in order to pick her target and find the crime. Now, that would be one thing if it was just, something she said offhand in a campaign, moment, perhaps revealing her hand in a moment she shouldn't have revealed her hand. But there was actually a debate later that year where there were three other candidates running for the position, and they were asked a very specific question by Preet Bharara.
As Attorney General, if you are elected, you will have enormous power, and people have a right to know how you will use that power. Just opening an investigation can destroy your reputation, ruin a livelihood, influence an election. Literally, just opening the case. So I want to ask each of you, what is your view of the proper basis required to start an investigation of a person or a corporation or a nonprofit? How much smoke, if any, does there need to be? And how do you guard against a rush to judgment against someone, whether it's an average unknown New Yorker or Donald Trump and his associates? Ms. James.
We should all follow the example of Barbara Underwood. Following the facts and following the evidence. And I'm so glad that my opponents now agree with me that when you file a lawsuit, one should be judicious. Whether it's the Martin Act, the Donnelly Act, deceptive business practices, consumer law, it's really critically important that everyone understand, as was mentioned by Mr. Bharara, that filing a lawsuit, simply opening up an investigation, can ruin lives. And so with respect to Donald Trump, we need to follow his money. We need to find out where he's laundered money. We need to find out whether or not he's engaged in conspiracy and whether or not he's colluded not only with Putin, but also with China as well. We all know that 10 years ago he was almost bankrupt. Most domestic banks were not lending him any money. Where did he get all of the money to purchase his real estate holdings and all of his golf courses? And all of those transactions have happened here in New York City, which is why the next Attorney General is absolutely critical. And the next Attorney General will be someone who will be wearing high heels.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. James. Can I just ask one very quick follow-up, just a few seconds from each of you? A lot of you mentioned Donald Trump. You've been mentioning Donald Trump in your campaigns. And part of the spirit of the question was to find out from you, notwithstanding there being some smoke with respect to some aspects of what this president has done in his private business, there are cases that have been brought, cases that's pending on the part of the Attorney General's office itself. But is anyone on this panel saying that because there's some evidence in some area, or some smoke in some area, that means that without more, that every single business, associate, organization that is in any way affiliated with Donald Trump is ripe for investigation without more?
There's at least 100 inquiries into his transactions, but the ones that obviously individuals are focused on is the Mueller investigation, the Southern District, the Attorney General, and also the FBI. Those are the investigations which obviously are closing the walls in on Donald Trump. So it's really critically important that we not just talk about association, that we talk about his transactions, and more importantly, that we talk about the Trump Foundation and the organization as a whole.
Mr. Miller, you want to round it out quickly?
Well, sure. Preet, I was going to.
So in that debate there, Alex, did you hear anything that indicated she would only seek out to prosecute Donald Trump if it happened about that she came across a crime that he might have committed? Or does it sound like she was promising, as part of her campaign pitch, to just start to investigate him?
I mean, you got to give it to Preet. He tried, man. He tried to give her enough.
So
it was like, are you really saying this? Is this really what you're not if there's smoke, whatever smoke means, but oh my god, it's amazing.
We gotta just look at all his transactions to find out what's happening.
No, we're gonna go after him. What part of go after him? I don't understand.
So now, because this is
his high school girlfriend,
I'm sure you know that when she said this was alarming to many people, and that they were very concerned about the shifting of norms and turning, weaponization of laws against political opponents, right? That this was a huge violation.
Harris didn't do an entire podcast on this.
And so, when CNN had her on just after she had won the election, you'll hear how they really hammered her on how untoward it was to say this in public as your campaign promise.
Tonight, the woman who may be Trump's biggest threat when he leaves office, I'm talking about the Attorney General of New York, Democrat Letitia James. She is leading a civil probe of the Trump Organization right now, which is clearly on Trump's mind. He has singled out the Attorney General by name in his 46-minute-long rant about election fraud. Yesterday saying, in part, I hear that these same people that failed to get me in Washington have sent every piece of information to New York so that they can try to get me there. And all it's been is a big investigation in Washington and New York and any place else they can investigate, because that's what they want to do. They want to take not me, but us down. And we can never let them do that. Well, the Attorney General is out front. Attorney General James, I appreciate your time and thank you very much tonight. So we know President Trump has held talks about issuing preemptive pardons for himself and for his family, for his adult children, for his son-in-law. I just want to be clear, though, so everyone understands, that would protect him federally, but it would not protect him from anything you're investigating, correct?
Well, first, Erin, thank you for having me this evening. And I want the American people to know that the days of this administration are closely coming to an end. And last year, I introduced a bill to the New York State Legislature to close a pardon loophole. And currently, there is nothing in the law in the state of New York that would preclude a investigation by local and state authorities against the Trump Organization, Donald Trump, and or any other member of his family and or associates or business partners. There's nothing preventing our investigation from going forward against Donald Trump as a private citizen.
Okay, so now the big question will come. If he goes ahead with these pardons, does that mean that you need to do even more investigating? Does it influence your decision about whether to pursue, criminal law violations? Because you're going to be the only one, really who can, right? The feds can't.
Well, as you know, there is a criminal.
So you see, CNN really hammered her hard on this promise, and NBC News, prior to her taking office when she was elected, wrote, incoming New York Attorney General plans wide-ranging investigations of Trump and family. New York Attorney General-elect Letitia James says she plans to launch sweeping investigations into President Donald Trump, his family, and anyone in his circle who may have violated the law once she settles into her new job next month. We will use every area of the law to investigate President Trump and his business transactions and that of his family as well, James, the Democrat, told NBC News in her first extensive interview since she was elected last month. James outlined some of the probes she intends to pursue with regard to the president, his business, and his family members. They include any potential illegality involving Trump's real estate holdings in New York, highlighting a New York Times investigation published in October into the president's finances, the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with a Russian official, examine government subsidies Trump received, which were also the subject of Times investigative work, whether he is in violation of the Emoluments Clause of the U.S. Constitution through his New York business. So you can see NBC News is really painting the concern about how this is a political, investigation that is looking for a crime because they've chosen the target in advance. You can see how everyone was up in arms over this.
Oh yeah, no, they totally seem torn about it. They're really concerned, and this is the problem, right? Like I can't blame Trump for I can, but not for sort of innovating in this regard. Okay. What I can blame him for is sort of not finding a way to end the weapon itself, but rather turning it on his enemies, or as I've said before, it's like Frodo, coming up with a cunning plan to use the ring to take down, Sauron with, or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, That's, it's not that my problem is that Sarin is good or that he would had used the ring in better ways before. It's that, this direction goes nowhere. And I hear from Republicans a lot telling me like, well, they did all these things to us, whatever. It's like, yes, I understand this. It's just that this course of action doesn't get you anything you want. Like, it really doesn't. All it gets you is making it less and less palatable for somebody to leave office, right? And
it
there'll
does
be
get you one
somebody
thing.
at some point.
It does get you one thing you want. It does get me one thing that I want, at least, is to watch a couple instances of people squirm on TV as they answer
That's fair enough.
as they answer questions.
That's
And that is what
it gets you very little. Okay, it gets you. It gets
Yes,
you. A
okay, thank you.
Compared to what
I'll
you
accept
deserve.
that.
Yes,
It does not get you a coherent
it's not
society,
much.
or although it does possibly achieve my goal of making sure that everyone who does enter politics serves time after they leave.
I think what you're going to see is a normalization of the post-election pardon, where it'll just be expected that every single official that worked in government gets a blanket pardon, because why not?
For any crimes they may have committed, even when they were 5 and stole that
tickets,
lollipop from the candy corner store or candy store. So speaking of the things that it does provide you, which is the awkward questioning, CNN on Anderson Cooper had a panel talking about Letitia James' indictment by the grand jury.
Former director of the FBI. Today, exactly 2 weeks later, Halligan has gotten her second indictment of President Trump's perceived enemies listed on that social media post, the Attorney General of the state of New York. Joining me now, CNN senior political commentator, former Illinois Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, CNN senior political commentator, former Trump campaign advisor David Urban, and former federal prosecutor Jeffrey Toobin. So, Jeff, the indictment is 4 pages long. Does it seem like a strong case to you?
Well, I mean, it's a bizarre case in many respects. First of all, it's incredibly small potatoes. This is a house that was purchased for $137,000 in 2020, a year when the average house in America was sold for $383,000. So any mortgage, any insurance on a house of that value is going to be very small, and in ordinary circumstances wouldn't draw the attention of the Department of Justice. But more importantly, what is so chilling about this case is that ever since Watergate, presidents have imposed on themselves the rule that they do not interfere in criminal prosecutions, much less demand them. But here you have a demanded prosecution, and one that the career people in the Eastern District of Virginia thought was an unworthy case. That's a really chilling example of how the criminal justice system is not supposed to work.
Jeff, I mean, according to PolitiFact, the day after she was elected in 2018, Letitia James was asked by a community activist if she was going to sue President Trump, and she replied, quote, "Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the ass. He's going to know my name personally." I mean, that's not a great look for somebody who has just been elected or just been campaigning, who hasn't even looked, I guess, at deeply at any evidence.
Well, that's, we live in a system where attorneys general and district attorneys in the United States, unlike almost any other country, are elected officials, are politicians. So they run for office making political statements. That's how our system works. It's not pretty. I don't think it's a great system, but there's nothing uncommon about it. The other point to make, though, is just because she made inappropriate comments, that doesn't mean she should get indicted for fraud years later. I mean, we're not supposed to live in a system of that kind of tit for tat. Criminal cases are supposed to stand or fall on their own merits.
David, I mean, there's no evidence that Letitia James's indictment stems from some widespread audit of thousands of mortgage applications. It seems that the president's allies were looking through her background to find something on her, and they found this. Isn't that kind of the essence of selective prosecution?
Yeah, so Anderson, just a couple points. Jeffrey makes a point that people, prosecutors are elected, they're political animals, but yet I've never, Jeff, maybe I'm wrong, you can point it out, I'm not aware of many prosecutors saying, I am going after this specific individual. They're usually political statements. I'm going to be tough on crime. I'm going to make your lives better, safer communities, those types of political statements, not I'm going to go get the governor. I'm going to take down the president of the United States. So I think that's a little too cute by half on that. And look, Letitia James, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. There is no small crime, as Jeff knows. This is relatively small potatoes, as you point out, Jeff, correctly, but it's still mortgage fraud. It's mortgage fraud. She signed on a piece of paper saying, I allege, I affirm, I swear that these facts are correct. For those of you who filled out a mortgage application, it says on there at the bottom, you fill it out, you sign your name, that this is going to be my secondary residence. She did that knowingly that she was not going to use it as a secondary residence. So that's allegedly fraudulently. And whether it's a small fraud or a big fraud, when you're the attorney general of a state committing fraud, it's a bad look. Anderson, and to answer your question directly, look, I think the Letitia James action was terrible. I think any selective prosecution is bad and should be rebuffed, whether it's by Letitia James or by this Justice Department. I think it's bad for America, the American justice system, and people's trust in our system.
Congressman, I mean, live by the sword, die by the sword. Is that the way the system should be?
Yeah, no. I mean, look, I think two things can be true here. I think the first thing is Letitia James never should have made those comments. She never should have run on, I'm going to go after him, before she's seen the evidence, before she's had anything. That was wrong. Not illegal. That was wrong.
Adam Kinzinger, at the end of that, it tails it off with, she shouldn't have done that in retrospect, but it's not illegal to do that. It's not illegal to campaign and promise to target your political adversaries as part of your campaign promise. She shouldn't have done it, but it's not illegal. And you had Jeffrey Toobin, who is most famous for getting fired for jacking off on a Zoom call and then being rehired after some sort of corporate rehabilitation program that he went through. Saying that, it's normal. It's normal in the United States. That's just what attorneys generals do. They run on a platform of targeting their political opponents. My favorite part was the one where he tried to say that it's such small potatoes that it would just be completely ignored. That, as long as the crime that you're committing in fraud is small enough, that it's just a waste of people's time to bother.
I think that's where you're being confused. I think he was commenting on the breasts of a female coworker there.
Oh, okay. I understand.
It's small potatoes. Normally would be ignored, but these days.
So yes, I mean, as far as positive side effects of the chaos goes, I think watching some people have to go through some mental gymnastics in order to try to figure out why this particular instantiation of the political prosecution is bad, where the other ones were fine, or why they were ignored.
Look, I mean, kudos to CNN for whatever reason actually going there, right, and creating a little bit of tension, or at least.
Well, yes, my issue, I think.
Come on, you gotta admit it. You gotta give.
No. I do. So I think my specific issue is Anderson Cooper had to say, well, Politico said that after she was elected, she said this. Now, Letitia James was one of the main central focuses of the news cycle during that time she was going after Donald Trump. Why does Anderson Cooper not know already, and have to reference Politico, that she campaigned? Not that she said it offhand after she was already elected that she was going to do it. She campaigned, and in a debate specifically articulated that her intent was to sift through all of his papers to find a crime.
Yeah. I mean, of course they downplayed it. I'm just my standards are so low. I'm shocked the conversation is even happening.
Yes. It was a good of him to make note of that, and then ask Jeffrey Toobin if there was a little bit of
I mean,
hypocrisy
if my slightly more cynical self says that this is CNN's recent more like quote unquote centrist takes, whatever, trying to like not be like ridiculously partisan, but only severely. Yeah, it's still good to have some of this.
So if anyone wants to get up on comment while we start to wrap up this episode, go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, Alex and I will send us all off. Alex, are there any other stories that were on the cutting room floor on your side that perhaps we can pick up next week?
What is on the cutting room floor for me? No. I mean, the stuff I follow closely is Israel and Ukraine, but those are just in weird long-term holding patterns. By the way, to clean up a little bit what we said before about Iran, I was sort of looking a little bit, and I attached a couple of posts to the space, and it appears we were both right in a way.
Okay.
So there is pre-invasion, pre-bombing era footage of Tehran with nary a headscarf in sight. Showing that it was like really kind of, I mean, I don't know if it was like a particular region or whatever, but like it's not the only footage as well. Like it was pretty clear that the headscarf was on the way out. But recently, they formally or semi-formally said, whatever, it's over. We're not going to enforce it.
So the story that I had was discussing how internally there is sort of there's arguments among who they're calling sort of like the hardliners, of course, the more religiously focused people, and it's a fascinating thing I want to talk about at some point. The reason I think it's important is because Iran being a large country with millions of people is not something easy to manage when you are, let's say, more authoritarian in nature. Now, of course, it's not completely authoritarian. It's not something that has no liberties or things like that. There are a lot of things that are illegal that still happen quite often because, like in many countries where let's say the social status is of a harsher treatment from the government, there are a lot of things that go by the wayside despite being strictly illegal on paper. Right? They are too hard to keep order on, so things are sort of done.
You mean like
with
drugs
a hush,
in the
hush,
US?
wink, wink. Drugs in the U.S. or just think speakeasies as a clear example during Prohibition, right? Yeah. Speakeasies are an example where it's like everyone knew they existed, and probably a lot of them were known, but only under certain conditions would they crack down. Or it's another modern similarity would be the way that we still have technically a federal law saying that marijuana is a Schedule I drug, but now we have dispensaries all over the place, and we just sort of pretend and pick and choose which laws we're going to enforce when, right?
Look,
so
I will tell you what I hear from the other side of the veil. Hey, pun not intended, but I embrace it.
Retroactively intended.
Yes, yeah. I will embrace it. I will own it. Which is that there was a surprising amount of support for the government that came up after the bombings, which is, of course, not really shocking when you know that this happens all the time. I mean, hell, Democrats were supporting George Bush after 9/11, right? Like it's just what happens when a country gets attacked. Everybody
call
rallies
it a
around
patriotism bubble.
Yes. But even like young people who generally were not very favorably inclined towards the government sort of, started responding very positively to the, quote unquote supreme leader there, as a symbol of resistance or whatever. But I think what you might be seeing is an understanding by the regime, and that's like really kind of live player stuff. It's a good sign for their sort of vitality, which is to say, like, look, we can keep focusing on bullshit right now, or we can, give the people who want to support us something that, they want that we don't really ultimately care about, so that everybody can come together on the stuff that matters. That's my completely own reading.
It's not necessarily how I would summarize my angle or the things that I think are there. But
that's my reading. I'm not saying that this is what happened. I'm just giving you a different.
It might be a component in the direction of what I'm interested in. And the reason I'm interested in this is, obviously if let's pretend that the government had, complete control and had the ability to enforce every single, hard law that they have, those social restrictions and things like that. You could imagine them hunkering down and doubling down on everything and being obstinate in the face of whatever is going on in the world, to the European Union's putting sanctions back on. But these types of signs give a possibility of what I might call a soft coup. Not that anyone's overthrowing the Ayatollah or anything, but that as a way of sort of keeping power as a figurehead and having the established power, allowing for certain different undercurrents to take way, similar in a way to what you're saying, except more close to the top, and allowing other decision makers to play a larger role, and we'll call it moderate in certain ways in order to somewhat like China when it decided it was going to become pseudo-capitalist, still maintain.
I will tell you something you might not know, which is that Pashinyan, the current prime minister, no, president, I don't know what he is. Yeah, president, but not the supreme leader, right? The president who's not like it's a weird presidency, I guess.
Yeah.
The virtualized presidency. He lives inside a virtual machine. Anyway, he is considered one of the people that wanted to get along with the West and America and negotiate.
That's part of one of the stories that I have in the stack.
Right,
yeah.
but when you get elected and then get bombed, that tends to put a dent in your agenda, which means that actually what seems to have happened is that he has gotten his agenda undermined rather than reinforced.
Right, yeah.
Just FYI.
Yeah, that's actually part of the story. So you can see why those are things I eventually want to get to, because I am accumulating these sorts of stories as we go on.
Okay, I'm just I guess to put my cards on the table, I know that there is a ridiculous, and I mean absolutely insane amount of propaganda specifically about Iran. I believe Netanyahu's latest talking point is that well, they've got missiles and they can go 8,000 miles, and if you add another 3,000 miles, they could hit Mar-a-Lago. He said Mar-a-Lago, right? For no reason.
Well,
apparently, he just came out.
He has an audience, right? Who might be very concerned with that capability.
But you can see what he's doing. I guess he's not subtle. Anyway, long story short, there is a lot of propaganda around Iran, and some of it is a little bit more subtle than this. Let's just say. So, I don't know how to say this without sort of creating an air of like epistemic helplessness, right? But like I would definitely be double cautious about. For example, you're like, okay, they're putting back sanctions, yes, but Russia and China both have come out and said we don't agree with the sanctions, right? Because these sanctions are supposed to be bringing back Security Council, UN Security Council sanctions, right? Which China and Russia had originally voted for. But now they've said, yes, okay, whatever. Since the U.S. left that deal, years ago, and the reason you're snapping them back does not make any sense for us, we're going to ignore that, right? So, in fact, Iran used to be a lot more isolated at the time when Russia and China were voting against Iran, to now where immediately they didn't even like have a process or something. They're like, yeah, fuck it, whatever, we don't care. So make of that what you will.
Well, of course, in this quick, here is what we would have been talking about. We didn't get to talk about all this sorts of things and talk nuance. So don't confuse anything I might have said I wanted to bring up as a everything is rosy.
I'm saying this as a broad caution, not that what you said specifically,
Yeah.
Well, when I had specific objections, I mentioned it, but like not to say like you don't do this or whatever.
Gotcha. Stabitha Badcock, go ahead. What would you like to comment on?
I wanted to move back a bit to the political prosecutions that we seem to be having, and it's very troubling. We have these institutions that are held up by all these pillars, and as of the last few years, we keep knocking these pillars over. And I wonder how many of them we're going to have to knock over before we lose it. Specifically, like, it was previously understood that political prosecution was banana republic stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're sort of like, no, we're going to do that now. We're going to start doing it. And on the liberal side, the threat was, Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy. Well, once you say that, you sort of allow these weapons to be created, these swords of Damocles.
Right.
And we keep making them. We keep making new swords of Damocles. And it's like, guys, these are going to be used by the other side. Do we want to spiral down this road where we keep losing institutions and keep losing our prohibitions?
So the problem comes from in that clip from Anderson Cooper, one of the phrases that slipped out from Jeffrey Toobin is this, this shouldn't be some sort of tit for tat. So when you have a tat, that means you had a tit. And so what was the tit? Well, everyone sort of
see
applauded.
what I'm talking about, the female coworkers. Anyway, sorry,
Yes.
go ahead.
The tit in this case was Letitia James actively campaigning, saying, I'm going to go after Trump, and being relatively applauded because the news cycle, by and large, was focused on how are we going to get Trump? How are we going to use all of these institutions? And it was MSNBC was not the only culprit, even though they're the most sort of out there mainstream media outlet, the wackiest one. And all of them were fixated on following this and sort of justifying all of the behavior. Anything that happened, if you didn't have the specific recording or email from Joe Biden to Merrick Garland saying, do this, I want this to happen, then somehow supposedly all of the activity that happened against Donald Trump was legitimate. You weren't like, I don't know how I'm supposed to obtain those recordings or emails, even if they exist. I don't know how anyone is supposed to obtain them. We're just supposed to magically wait for them to occur before we even suspect that anything untoward might have happened by Merrick Garland, the guy who was actually stopped by the previous Trump administration, or at least Congress in conjunction with the Trump administration, from becoming on the Supreme Court, having a reason to not like Donald Trump and having a reason to be able to, to want to make decisions against his favor legally and punish him for stopping, your political ascension to the Supreme Court. All sorts of things that we could openly question were tampered by the media, and then the justifications for going after him is he's clearly corrupt and he's a bad person who can't be president, so all of this is fine. Now the question that I would have for you would be this, because this is really, in my opinion, the source of the problem. Outside of gentlemen's agreements, what was supposed to stop any of this from eventually happening anyway, or at least in the sense that we are now at least all aware that it's happening, as opposed to the wink, wink, nudge, nudge ones where it was all plausibly deniable that it wasn't happening when it was probably happening all along?
Well, I think partly was in previous ages, our politicians were pretty well on the up and up. I mean, corruption's always been there to some degree, but it's getting much worse. So the idea that you could find something to prosecute is now very plausible. There definitely is fire. And it's like obvious fire, and that's why we see so much damn smoke. But I think, it was just sort of understood, like Nixon was allowed to step down without being criminally prosecuted. Could he have been? Certainly. But his successor knew that's not healthy for our country. That's not going to be good for us. So, he's out of office, problem solved, let it go. But the fever pitch of politics now is so high that, well, they called people Hitler so often they had to call them literal Hitler.
Well, so I want to take a little bit of issue with that. If you go back just the last 40 years, let's say, you could argue there has been just a pattern of the underlings protecting the boss by being the ones who take the fall. That, when, during the Bush administration, Bush 2, not Bush Senior, okay, there was an investigation, a special counsel investigation, that ultimately resulted in the prosecution of a guy nicknamed Scooter Libby. Scooter Libby. And he was prosecuted for lying to the FBI. Now, that's a very, very fun thing to be charged with that happens over and over again. And the investigation involved, and I have to say I'm sort of embarrassed for being this much of a nerd to have this shit on automatic recall in my brain, but the investigation was over who leaked a woman named Valerie Plame's name.
Yes, Valerie Plame.
Because Joe Wilson, her husband, Jesus Christ, why do I remember all this? Joe Wilson, her husband, was against the Iraq War, and he had written that he had pursued this yellow cake that was supposedly being purchased by Iraq in order to build a nuclear bomb or a dirty weapon with the yellow cake material. And he had written an article saying that he found no evidence of this purchase. And then Valerie Plame's name was written and she was working for the CIA, and she was like sort of undercover. So it's one of those things where you're revealing someone, a spy's identity, and that puts them in danger, and all their contacts and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And the idea was propagated that her name was leaked because she was married to Joe Wilson, who had done this report going against the Iraq War's information collection, blah, 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 blah. And that her name was leaked in order to punish him. It was a threat. It was a shot across the bow. So this special counsel investigation was going on. And I don't remember how long it lasted, but it was similar to the way that Trump was covered. It was a huge investigation because it was definitely for sure that the Bush administration leaked Valerie Plame's name in order to get back at Joe Wilson. Now, do you remember the outcome of who actually leaked the name?
I do not recall, but I remember it was already a note. She wasn't a classified agent, and I don't remember who leaked the name.
Okay, well, Scooter
but
Libby
you're making me really nostalgic.
Yes.
No, he lied.
Scooter Libby was not
no
the
crime.
person who leaked the name. Okay?
No,
it was.
I know that.
It was. If I'm going to hedge this now, this might be. I think it was Dick Armitage.
That is correct.
Who leaked the name.
That is correct.
Okay. And
what was interesting about that case to me was that it was entirely Scooter Libby's prosecution was entirely a process charge. There was no underlying crime by anybody.
To the FBI. He lied to the FBI.
Right.
About
even
something.
though
he didn't leak the name,
right.
and he wasn't related to the leaking the name. Dick Armitage was not part of the Bush administration, and he had just leaked the name sort of accidentally, he says. But he was not part of the administration, and he was not a huge proponent of the Iraq War, so like this whole chain of things was not there, and he was never charged for leaking her name. So the entire thing that spawned the investigation never resulted in his actual prosecution, despite him being the person who did the thing that spawned the investigation. So Scooter Libby winds up going and serving time. I think they commuted his sentence, if memory serves me, but he goes and winds up serving time because he lied to the FBI about something I don't recall. But this procedural thing that happens happens all the time, right? So all of these things wind up being dog and pony shows, and people do wind up going to jail for crimes, but it's always the underlings protecting supposedly the boss.
But Gator, what he lied about to the FBI, was that small potatoes or not? Because this is very important.
I don't know the potatoes, man.
If I remember right, they were C-cup.
So it's like, I don't know if I can buy the idea that everyone's been squeaky clean or that
you might as well at that point.
There's been gentleman's agreement. I think what generally tends to happen by that sort of thing is that someone winds up taking the fall, sort of in a mafioso fashion, who is an underling, takes the fall for something to protect everybody up above for whatever's happening at the time. Now, in that case, your point. Well, you're right. Was not the upper body, but like if you look at it with Hillary Clinton, Comey goes out and he says that she did all these things, all the stuff that we were following with the emails, all the classified stuff, everything she denied, she totally did. But no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case, is what he said, right? Well, why?
Right.
Why would no reasonable prosecutor bring such a case? What is the logic that goes into a reasonable prosecution about leaking classified info when people have literally accidentally leaked classified info and gone to prison for it?
Well, I think we can agree a reasonable prosecutor, if he found himself prosecuting Hillary, would find himself to be unreasonable because he'd probably kill himself.
Yes, possibly, quite possibly. Yes, it was.
So clearly he wasn't reasonable.
Just look it up. My memory was correct.
So basically what we're saying is, guys, like no sane prosecutor would prosecute this woman. Are you guys insane?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And lying to the FBI was the thing that they were trying to get Flynn on in the first Trump administration, right? Even though in their own internal documents they said they didn't believe Flynn was actually lying to them.
Didn't they?
They did, and then they ungot him. They got him, and then they ungot him because his whole thing was overturned. So my point is, I don't know if it's really been true that people have been squeaky clean, but that whatever investigation occurs and whatever people are trying to protect themselves from at the top, usually it's the underlings. They get their head and then they move on, and it's usually over something procedural and not over an actual crime, not because of any good behavior. It's just because they're trying to, let's say, keep the game afloat, where the political class gets to basically do whatever they want, not go to jail. And anyone who does pays the cost to give the public a head whenever they have to winds up getting eventual benefits later on down the line. I think that's the game that people largely would say has been being played.
I think, Gator, there is a good question being asked here, though, right? Which is that, to the degree that institutions do last for some amount of time, what sets the amount of time? Is it just, a set of dominoes where the outer ones fall first and the inner ones fall when the outer ones aren't there to protect them, or something else? There's a march through institutions. Like, what is the mechanism by which the continual, is it just, the people who want to game the system getting better at gaming the system over time by just accumulating understanding of how to do so? Like, what is the way in which
not to
things that appear to work at one point stop working later?
Not to have a second round of Gator annoys Alex, but I think part of it might be something that that Eric Weinstein once made a point about a lot, which was more like the concept of kayfabe, which is, like sort of a lot of it is for show, which is something I sort of just said a couple moments ago, which is that there's a lot of these investigations and things, which is everyone sort of understands is the way that you entertain the people, right? You do the investigations, everyone gets a feeling that things are being done and that
right, but I guess the question is, like, in the case of Trump, that's not what happened. So
no,
why did it change?
Well, because he wasn't playing the game, right? He's the actual real wrestler coming into the wrestling arena that is all, that's pre-scripted and the moves rehearsed.
Yeah, right? I mean, I guess he wasn't playing the game, but he has no curiosity about what happened in Butler, and he wasn't playing the game. But
if I may, he kind of upsets the entire game. He breaks kayfabe.
Right. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Could be.
I mean, that's in that
Maybe
paradigm.
We solved
that's
it, guys. I think
it's all done. There we go. Yeah.
Done.
No, but my question goes back to, like, based off of the way that the system is set up. You have, and I say system set up. It's not necessarily set up like that from construction, but has evolved over time to be set up this way. You have the federal government with a myriad of complex laws. Several times in the recent past, we've talked about things where. Most recently being this guy firing at a ABC studio because Jimmy Kimmel got suspended for a couple days. He fired at this ABC studio, and he was arrested and released quickly on bail by the local authorities, but then rearrested by the feds. But he was arrested by the feds for disrupting the I'm going to forget
public
the exact
airwaves
law. It was like, disrupting, the public airwaves facility or, communication system or something like that, disrupting the operation of it. Nothing involving actually like threatening people's lives with guns or anything like that, endangering people. The thing that you would expect. It was a weird sort of law. And there's a myriad of these things.
This reminds me of, and maybe that's kind of where a lot of the problems arise. That when they went after Al Capone, right? Famously, they didn't go after him for, I don't know, murdering people, something like that. They went after him for a tax charge, right? And this has been somewhat praised in public memory, right?
It was so creative,
yeah. It's like, well, if they're gonna get you, and if you're Al Capone, you have it coming for you, so who cares? But or the RICO stuff, right? That is like ridiculous laws that are. As far as I understand, they if you were to apply to anybody else, you would find everybody guilty. Oh, look, they applied it to Trump too. Anyway, stuff, whatever, because they basically people agree that somebody is guilty, and they'll go so far as to pass new laws to use against you if they can't find anything. Right? It's like, fuck it. So yeah, it's unfortunately, once you cross that bar where you're like, yeah, it wasn't done correctly, but the correct thing was done, and you sort of enter that territory, then the time is ticking, the clock's ticking, like for who will consider that somebody might be Al Capone and somebody else might disagree. And while Al Capone was a consensus Al Capone, well, maybe Trump wasn't. So, then what?
Like, let's take the idea for a moment from some of the perspective of Trump's adversaries that Trump is a corrupt person, and he's engaged in corrupt business practices his entire life, and things like that. And so Letitia James or Jack Smith, all these other people who are pursuing him, yeah, sure, they probably bent some rules and things to try to go get him. But we all know that Trump really has only gotten away with these things, and it's unfair that he's gotten away with all these crimes, right? So you can say, okay, well, we finally got him. Now we have Letitia James, someone who went after him. What's the argument to say it's not okay to go after her if she actually did, and the evidence supports that whatever they found, however they decided to go look for it, that she actually did commit mortgage fraud, right? They have all the papers. All these papers get submitted. It's under penalty of law. What's the point of having the law if no one's ever allowed to look at them? What is the precursor information you're supposed to use to open an investigation, right? Like what's the precursor piece of information that makes it legitimate for you to go to look at someone's information, right? If you're being hired for any company or the government, they do background checks. They go sifting through your life. They go talking to people to decide whether you're worthwhile to hire. If you're already working for the government, why are they not permitted to root through all your shit to see if you've been on the up and up?
If you're a self-respecting public servant, you have an opposition researcher do the research outside the government and then send you a anonymous file, which you innocently decide to go after.
And then you get the opinion of several people, maybe 51 people, to write an opinion letter saying that it has all the earmarks of a thing, right? And then it has
who
all
are not in government, or at least claim they're not in government, but had been in government, perhaps
right.
in an agency that trains people to lie for a living. I don't know.
No, so I think my question back to you, Stabitha, is what is the actual thing that we would be upholding? And I agree with you that a lot of these things are seemingly falling apart, but in my opinion, they are falling apart because they never really deserve to be constructed this way in the first place. That the flaws actually exist with the constructions that we have placed, around us, not because we have been unworthy to uphold these sacred institutions. I think the institutions, in my opinion, have been flawed and created sort of piecemeal over time by various political movements and created for different justifications, but do not necessarily deserve to exist in and of themselves to uphold, or at least not in their current incarnation.
No, I think you're right. And what I'm observing in broader terms is sort of the breakdown of our government. Like, the people are kind of getting it. It's not working for us. It's working really well if you're Nancy Pelosi or if you're any of the people in Congress. So yeah, it seems like the government is not fit for purpose, and it becomes more and more obvious, and they attempt to hide it less and less. Like Letitia James, she said on the campaign, "I'm going to prosecute Donald Trump." Clearly without knowing what she was going to prosecute him for. She just found something to do. And so that sort of thing. Whereas before with the Richard Armitage thing, it was kabuki theater, it was behind the scenes, but they didn't go in saying, we're going to get this guy, Scooter Libby. So it's general breakdown of the efficacy of our government and of how well we're being convinced that it's working. We can see behind the curtain too well now.
Well, actually, you touch on an interesting point, which is it the functioning of the government, or is it the appearance of the functioning of the government? And I don't say that as a purely superficial matter, because the public having common knowledge that the government is corrupt is novel. I think most people didn't used to think so obviously that everything is kind of broken, and that belief spreading through the population itself is a problem. But yeah, I think that's maybe where what we're trying to put our finger on is it's not necessarily that things are less corrupt than they were, but they are obviously more corrupt. Like the corruption is a lot more in the open in a way.
And moreover, the how deeply it's not working is affecting us more and more. Things like we went through COVID, and that exposed our protections aren't going to work. Going fast to now, how many people are finding it difficult to buy a home? When Scooter Libby went to jail on a process crime, what was the average home price? And I know that those are two very unrelated things, but it's how well the government functions sort of equals how well its citizens are living. And, look at how well we're living right now. things like obesity and chronic disease, housing crisis, all of these things that we sort of trusted them to do, and they sort of did. They were scraping off the top and getting their share, but people were still buying homes and getting married.
I think I can bring you and Gator together by saying maybe the original, the source of all evil was the ending of the gold standard, which allowed the government to then just sort of issue IOUs instead
rock hard agree.
And therefore from there, a lot of pathology started. But it's, it used to be that the government was forced to obey some level of fiscal scrutiny that right now is whatever, Trump gets in, says we're going to cut the government, and then celebrates the first $1 trillion Pentagon budget, which has not been audited in a fucking long time or ever.
Yeah. They're just spending cartoon money three generations down.
Nothing means anything. And I don't, because it's abstract enough that people don't fully understand that every dollar that gets printed is effectively like, reducing the referend of every other dollar.
Well, they might not know that explicitly, but they do know that they're having a harder time meeting rent. They do know that their groceries are getting more expensive. Their life is getting more difficult.
Well, yeah, the problem with that, and I saw that in Greece, is that you have these ridiculous situations where the government fails people and people go out on the streets, and you're like, yes, that's right, that's what needs to happen. Let me hear what these people are demanding. And you listen, and they're like, we want more government,
Yeah, we want free this, we want free that,
whatever. And it's like, oh my God, we're so fucked.
Well, Trump does have, oh my God, like over 3 years left in his term. So if he lives that long to see the end of it, maybe he will shut the lights off on his way out and deprive people of the tools to continue to do some of this in the future. I'm skeptical on that, but maybe that's what happens, right, Alex? Like maybe what you desired, which is like to actually remove the tools from being abused, will happen. But I am skeptical. But maybe that's what happens.
Deeply skeptical. Yes, I'm deeply skeptical for sure. No,
but with that. Alex, your tardiness at the front end has been compensated by the back end extension of the time on this podcast here, so we will call it a day. You've done your duty. Next time, set a couple redundant alarms, perhaps.
Yes.
Everyone, I hope you have a fantastically dumb week coming up, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.